Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 7th, 2020 meeting of the Glendale City Council. And as you may have seen the past few weeks, due to the evolving situation with the COVID-19 novel coronavirus and health recommendation from the LA County Health Department, the Glendale City Council meeting is available to the public electronically. Due to the social distancing requirements, the public will not be able to attend the meeting physically. The public is encouraged to watch and participate from the safety of their homes to practice social distancing. The meeting can be viewed on local cable charter channel 6, which is GTV6, or streaming online at glendaleca.gov. Go to the government tab and the public meeting portal, and you will be able to live stream the meeting. My colleagues on the City Council, whose role will be taken shortly, are all safer at home, observing the social distancing and the orders by the LA County Health and the City of Glendale. I appreciate all of them for putting up with the inconvenience of holding a meeting electronically, but we're all doing the best we can. As usual, we have staff in the room, side room, and if you wish to speak to an agenda item, you will be able to call the number that is listed. The number, by the way, is 818-937-8100. Please do not call in advance of the agenda item that you'd like to speak to, because we'd like to keep those calls only for the callers addressing the particular agenda items that we're on. That being said, may I ask for roll call, please?
Councilmember Agajanian.
Present.
Brotman. Brotman.
Sorry, here, I was on mute.
Devine.
Here.
Kasakian.
Here.
Mayor NAJARIAN.
Here, we have a quorum. I will lead the flag salute again, and due to the chorus of voices, if I could ask my colleagues to whisper the words, if you will. I don't want to deprive you of the opportunity to say the words. That way we'll have a clear record. Please repeat after me, those in the room. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for tonight's invocation. Tonight we give thanks for the continued blessing on this fine city and its leaders. We ask that you be a guide to our council in all of their considerations. We also pray that our city, county, state, nation, and the whole world recover from this pandemic, and pray for those who are suffering from this disease and their families. Let us pray that the time we spend with loved ones allow us to reflect on what's important. Let us all do small things with great love for the safety of our families, community, and other fellow human beings. We pray for safety and health and for peace here at home and around the world. Amen.
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 Mr. Ajemian, may we have your report?
The agenda for the April 7, 2020 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Wednesday, April 1st, 2020 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. Next item?
Next would be 3 presentation appointments, 3A agenda preview for the meetings of Tuesday, April 14, 2020.
Mr. Golanian.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members, City Council. On Monday, April 13, 2020, at 6 p.m., there will be a special meeting of the City Council regarding selection of a new mayor. The following day, on Tuesday, April 14th, 2020, for the Housing Authority, there are no agendized business items. that evening for the regular Glendale City Council meeting commencing at 6 p.m. You have a number of consent items, starting with Public Works regarding design and engineering services for tenant improvements at the Municipal Services Building, followed by Community Service and Parks regarding grant funds from the California Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency under the COVID-19 Emergency Homelessness Funding, and another one from Community Service and Parks regarding supplemental funding allocation from County of Los Angeles Workforce Development, Aging, and Community Services for the purchase of a Ford Transit high-roof cargo van for the Elderly Nutrition Program. And finally, on the consent items, Community Development regarding West Glendale Sustainable Transportation and Land Use Study proposed contract amendments to professional service agreement with Crandall Rambula to include multifamily mixed use and Tropico Center plan objective design criteria. Under action items, City Attorney regarding hospitality workplace worker protection proposal, Unite Here Local 11 proposed emergency ordinance and policy, and finally from City Attorney, update on the city clerk's position based on City Council's direction tonight. And that concludes my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Galanian. And folks, if you were listening, that's right. We will be picking a new mayor on Monday in a special meeting, which means my one-year term as mayor will be coming to a close. And there may be some hooting and hollering out there, but regardless, I certainly enjoyed it. I'll have just a few brief remarks. At Monday's meeting, and of course, the incoming mayor, whoever that may be, will be able to address his proposed agenda and make remarks for the year to come. Let's move to the next item. Who's laughing? Mr. Brotman?
Mrs. Devine.
Oh, that's Ms. Devine. I'm sorry. Okay.
His or hers.
His or hers. His or hers. I'm sorry. I was gender inappropriate in that. And it's not an indication of any decision that council has made. May we have the next item, please?
4 would be consent items, including the minutes. The following are routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before motion is proposed.
Thank you. Is there a motion for the consent calendar?
Mr. Mayor, it's Dan. I think because I wasn't here, I need to abstain from the minutes, so we'll have to pull that, I guess. Is that the right way to do this?
We can record you as an abstention for the minutes.
Okay, that's fine.
Mr.
I would like to move the item.
Is,
I'll second.
Consent item.
thank you. We have a motion, Agajanian, and a second by Devine, noting the abstention of Brotman on 4A. Let's take a roll call.
Councilmember Agajanian,
Yes.
Brotman,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. Next item.
Next item would be city council and staff comments.
Well, let me start with the first person on my screen, which is to the left. Mr. Brotman, would you like to make any comments?
Sure. And do I get 3 minutes or 5 minutes?
You are not limited by time, although let me just say, you're not limited by time.
Okay. No, I was teasing because this is my first time doing this, and I'm usually on the other side of the podium, and I have a clock that's counting down. So it's kind of nice to have the freedom not to think about that. Anyway, as you all know, I was sworn in last week along with Councilmember Kasakian and Councilmember Devine, and in my case, I gave my statement from home over a very, very bad internet connection. So I wanted to apologize for people that watched that. And it was unfortunate because I thought a lot about what I wanted to say and worked hard on it. And, you know, it's the technology, and it's certainly my fault, not IT's fault, because I should have worked out the internet connection first. But nonetheless, apparently there's a transcript available. Eliza, what's Eliza's last name? Papazian?
Yes.
Has put up transcripts, so just encourage anybody that wants to see what any of us said to look at the transcript. I'm not going to repeat what I said, but I thought I would share a few highlights, if that's all right. You know, the first one was just, you know, expressing how excited I am to be doing this. It's still a little surreal, but it'll normalize, I think, soon. I'm honored, you know, by the support that I received from the public. I did work very hard. I knocked on more than 2,000 doors, I think, and walked probably every corner of Glendale, which was a wonderful experience. But I did feel, you know, the wind was at my back the whole time because I think people are looking for change. And of course, you know, different people have different ideas of what change means. But in general, I think people were responsive to my messages around sustainability, of course, greater justice and balance in how we provide housing, a desire to see development humanized, I would say, you know, with projects that are compatible with surrounding neighborhoods, more value placed on design, more respect for historic resources, with things like my discussions on a walkable city with more transit options, greater focus on arts and culture, and a government that really listens more and has the confidence to show its warts. And I think in general, a city that is prepared to get in front of issues and lead by example and take some risks. You know, we can take some risks, get a few things wrong. I think that's important, and not to be kind of looking around all the time to see, you know, has Pasadena done it, has Burbank done it before, we're ready to act. So, you know, that was really what I think I campaigned on, and I think people responded to it. Anyway, just my luck, I'm coming in at a time like this. Unprecedented is an understatement, but I think it's an opportunity maybe to clear the deck of some fixed ideas and try new things like we're doing right now. I think this will lead to maybe some new ways to engage the public. So I'm really looking forward to it. Glendale has a lot going for it. It's going to be difficult times ahead, I recognize, and we'll be talking about COVID, I know, later on, so I don't want to get into that now. But just want to thank everyone for the support they gave me, and for those that didn't vote for me, also for their civic participation. It was great to see the voter participation rate go from, I think, 22% in 2017 to 41%, if I'm not mistaken, this time. And I think that's just a fantastic result. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brotman. Next on my queue is Councilmember Devine.
No comments this week. Thank you. Just staying home and staying healthy.
Thank you very much. Mr.
You're
Agajanian.
welcome.
I wait for our new friend, Councilmember Katafian, and then I will say briefly what I want to say.
Okay. Age before beauty, I guess, right, Mr. Agajanian? No, just kidding. Mr. Kasakian, please.
Just wishing everyone that they're safe at home. Wishing everyone good health. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Agajanian.
Yes. Yes. I just want to say I could not believe this little virus could ruin everything in this city and the entire universe. The 20,000 of them, and those viruses, if you collect together, would be as big as, your pencil, age of your pencil. It's so little, but the damage is so big, I can't believe it. I mean, to my business, which I'm a TV man and I'm running 2 TV stations, the damage is unbelievable. And I know lots of people now are suffering. But hopefully we will overcome this problem. I'm hoping that together we can overcome this virus, and there will be antivirus, and one day we will get together in the chamber like before, and I'm sure I'm praying for that better days. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Agajanian. I also will be very brief. I just want to express my regret to our 2 new council members and our re-elected council member, Paula Devine. Usually the swearing in, which was held last week, and maybe the first meeting of our new council is a time for celebration where your family, friends can climb up on the chairs of city council and take photos and rally and enjoy the fruits of a long campaign. I know you've all been deprived of that, and I hope that when things do normalize that we can have a better late than never celebration for the 3 elected council members. The other thing that I wanted to raise is months ago, when we were dealing with the demolition deterrence ordinance, we really only dealt with one part of it, and we promised those people that we would come back and bring the second part. That's something that I was in favor of, and council as a whole also supported that. It was just a matter of timing to get something in quickly to stop demolition and then have a more comprehensive ordinance and discussion. So do we have a timeline as to when that's going to come back? Because we did promise, and we do keep our promises here.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, thank you for the reminder. We can have that report back to the City Council in end of this month or beginning of May.
Okay. We don't want to let it fall off the table in the midst of all this emergency stuff we're doing.
Right. We will bring it by the end of May would be, in my mind, the latest date.
Okay. Thank you very much. And that concludes my comments. Any comments from staff?
Mayor?
Yes, Ms. Devine?
Mayor?
Yes.
It's Divine. I wanted to ask, I'm sorry I forgot about this, but is the proposal from Unite Here Local 11 coming back next week so we can look that over?
Yes, it is. That is going to be on next week's agenda, and we'll have a discussion on that. Thank you.
Okay, great.
I know
Thank
you raised it, and we had some support to hear from that. That will be next week.
Thank you. Okay.
When we have the next item, please.
Next would be number 6, community event announcements, 3-minute portion, and the 3-minute general public comments.
Thank you. This is general public comment, community event announcement. I am recognizing Tony Passarella.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, you're on, Tony. You're addressing the council.
Hello?
Yes, Tony Passarella, you are on the line, and we can hear you.
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me with?
Yeah.
It has to be green.
Here we go.
Yeah.
How about now, Mr. Passarella?
Yeah.
You're on. Mr. Passarella, you're on.
Can you hear me? Am I on?
Yes, you are on, and apparently my button had been muted. Yes, you're
Okay.
on.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, council members, and staff. Tony Passarella. I want to talk about 5G again. It's not a secret anymore. It's come out. Hundreds of scientists, epidemiologists, and doctors from literally around the world have come out and are pushing back in huge numbers. As long and so well are the general public in all countries of the world. So this is a very, very serious issue. There's many health problems associated with this, and and you've all been sent a letter, a very professionally written letter. Even I think City Attorney Garcia got a copy, and I think City Manager Beers and even the police chief was sent a copy. So what I'm going to ask, and hopefully you've opened it by now and had a chance to study it and read it, and City Attorney Garcia can advise you of what I'm going to ask at this point, I guess. And so I'm going to ask new City Council Artie Kasakian to make a motion to put on the agenda to create an emergency ordinance to halt any new installations, because as I'm driving around, I'm starting to see the first batch of the 24 applications that were approved. I'm starting to see these small cell site / 5G ready going up at this time all around Glendale. And so I would ask that the moratorium be to halt any new construction and to halt to receive any new applications or to approve any new application. So Councilmember Artie Kasakian, I'm asking you please make a motion to put that on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Passarella. The next speaker is Mauro Yakubian. I believe there's a slide that the speaker has submitted. Mauro Yakubian. Mauro, if you can hear us, you're on. You have 3 minutes to address the council. Mauro Yakubian, can you hear us? Mauro Yakubian, can you hear us? My fault. My bad. Mauro Yakubian, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
You are on the line.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor Najarian, City Council members, City staff. I'd first like to start off by saying, Mayor Najarian, I want to thank you for your great work at the helm this past year and your extraordinary leadership for Glendale during this pandemic we're all facing, so thank you. My name is Mauro Yakubian, and I am speaking tonight as a community member and a parent with, surprisingly, some very exciting news to share for everyone. The Pasadena Unified School District has just created an Armenian dual language immersion program with Armenian history, culture, and literature, with access to international baccalaureate courses at Blair High School. Not only is this the first of its kind in this area, but it is the first of its kind in the entire nation. Having been actively involved in the creation of this academy, along with many extraordinary community members, I can attest that the PUSD leadership, administrators, and staff were the finest partners to have in such an important collaboration in responding to the needs of our community. This innovative program will be located at Blair High School's adjacent campus, where students will also have access to the competitive and rigorous classes offered at Blair. Now, when it seems like every family is under financial strain and is reevaluating options, this opportunity could not have come at a better time, where tuition for this amazing program in education would be free. This opportunity is open to every student in neighboring districts, including Glendale. And I encourage anyone who is interested in learning more about this academy and would like to register their child or children for the upcoming 2020-2021 school year to please visit openenrollment.info. Again, it's openenrollment.info. The window for registration is from April 6th to April 20th. I want to thank you all very much for the opportunity to speak, and everyone, please be safe.
Thank you, Mauro. And in in line with our full disclosure, Morrow is my sister. You're wondering, who is that person who's showering the mayor with accolades? Okay, it's my sister. I've got to fess up. But Morrow, congratulations for a great job and your hard work in making this academy, this Armenian Language Academy, a success.
Thank you so much.
The next speaker is Luis Amezcua. Can you hear us, Luis?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. You are on, and you can address the City Council for 3 minutes.
Awesome. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. I appreciate the opportunity to comment. My name is Luis Amezcua, and I'm a senior campaign representative with the Sierra Club. First, I want to congratulate the council members on their election and also re-election. And I'm looking forward to working with you all to make progress on Glendale's climate goals. Secondly, I also want to commend GWP for enacting a moratorium on utility shutoffs when we are in the middle of a public health crisis. In these times, water and power are basic necessities that are essential to keeping us all safe and at home. As we navigate these challenging times, I want to highlight the need for making progress on our clean energy goals, especially some of the projects that were approved by Council last year in the summer. Projects like local solar and energy efficiency make our communities more resilient, provide local health benefits by reducing our reliance on local fossil fuel generation, and create good-paying jobs. These are the kind of community benefits that are needed now more than ever, and we would like to encourage Council and Glendale Water and Power to double down on clean energy so that they can foster these kinds of benefits for Glendale. I'm looking forward to continue supporting Glendale and its momentum towards a clean energy future. And thank you for your time. Please stay safe and healthy.
Thank you very much, Luis. Thank you for your advocacy. Thank you for your advocacy. I did meet you with Mr. BROTMAN before even the campaigns began, and I think everyone on the Sierra Club should be commending themselves on the distinction that the city of, or the Los Angeles metropolitan region has as being the cleanest air large city in the nation. I know there's many factors involved, but that's certainly something that you have played a tireless part in trying to achieve. And maybe we all thought we would never have that distinction. So congratulations. I don't have any other lines, no more calls for item 6. May we go to the next item, please?
Next item would be 8 action items. 8A, management services regarding discussion of state of emergency related to the novel coronavirus and the COVID-19, including emergency public orders.
Thank you. Ms. Beers.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, we are going to provide you with an update this evening on the coronavirus, COVID-19, and Glendale's response related to COVID-19. I will make some brief comments with a few slides, and then both chiefs are here this evening with a presentation as well. And we will end it with Mr. Garcia giving you a review of the public orders that are in place and of course, take any feedback that the council may have for us in terms of any changes or thoughts that you may have on our response and some of the orders that are in place. So with that, we will go to the PowerPoint presentation. And first and foremost, we want to assure you and the public that we are doing everything we can to protect the health and safety of our community, and that first and foremost comes first. We all have a role to play, not just first responders or healthcare professionals. Everyone has to help and cooperate in the directives that are in place for us to be able to get, hopefully, to the other side of this pandemic that has taken over all of our lives. So hopefully, the more that we listen and the more that we stay at home, more lives can be saved. We thank our community members for their cooperation, their patience, and their understanding. Many people have made sacrifices during this time. Businesses have closed, gatherings have been canceled, and social distancing from those that you love and want to be around has been in place. And all of this has been happening for the last 3 weeks, and we continue to ramp up as the weeks move forward. We thank our city employees who continue to support essential government functions on a daily basis upon which our residents and businesses rely upon, again, on a daily basis, 24 hours a day. We're grateful to the people serving in the front lines, and it goes without saying regarding our healthcare workers, of course, our first responders, the grocery store clerks, the postal employees, delivery drivers, and so many more on a daily basis. They are pulling their weight, and they are making sacrifices, and their sacrifices don't go unnoticed. As a reminder, just a few things in terms of reminders, and I'm not going to go through everything that we've done. We've suspended parking enforcement for the purposes of street sweeping restrictions in residential areas. All metered parking spaces are free for the first 20 minutes to facilitate delivery and pickup of food from restaurants. We've suspended late fees for city-provided services. The state has extended the state tax filing deadline to July 15th of 2020 for all California taxpayers. Southern California Gas Company has suspended service disconnections until further notice due to non-payment. GUSD continues to provide free meals for all children under the age of 18. GCC, we heard of this week, has held a drive-through food bank in their parking lot B on the Verdugo campus, and we're looking forward to hearing what those numbers look like for them. Local business support through a whole lot of marketing campaigns that we have put into motion, and business resources webinar, which is occurring tomorrow, April 8th at 11 a.m. And the webinar, basically it's the City of Glendale, the Verdugo Job Center, and the Glendale Chamber of Commerce. We've teamed up with the Small Business Administration to break down complex legislation that will be critical to the future of businesses and employees. Topics will include understanding the CARES Act and what it means to small businesses, what grants are available through the Small Business Administration, and how and where to apply to access for local, state, and federal resources. We do encourage small businesses and nonprofits with 500 employees or less seeking economic recovery, injury grant assistance to attend this webinar. And of course, Mr. Mayor, this webinar is featuring yourself, Judith Velasco, who's the Executive Director of the VJC, the Verdugo Job Center, Ben Raju, who's the Deputy District Director of Small Business Administration, and Alex Bruno, who's the Chair of the Board of Directors for the Glendale Chamber of Commerce. If folks are interested in this webinar, please visit glendaleca.gov, click on Register Here. The link will take you to an Eventbrite page to register, and once folks have registered, they'll receive an email with the login instructions for tomorrow. And of course, participants are encouraged to submit questions for the speakers via the chat box. Moving on to the next slide. In terms of some of the new pieces related to our response, the Glendale Water and Power Helping Hand program has been in place, but we want to bring attention to it. This assists eligible low-income customers who are having difficulty paying their utility services, and it provides up to $150 towards a bill payment or a deposit that they may need. If folks are interested in the program, they should visit bit.ly/GWP Helping Hand for more information. We will be working with our customers who are struggling and looking for assistance who might not qualify for this program, and all the program qualifications are online, but who may need other assistance in terms of their bills for payments and deferrals. Again, as one of the callers said earlier, and we've highlighted before, we continue with no shutoffs or late fees within GWP. One item that we have added to this list as of today, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, is the full closure of our parks this coming weekend. This coming weekend, we should have pretty nice weather starting on Friday, but for Saturday and Sunday, we've made the decision to shut down our parks. We've had some issues at some of our parks, in particular Brand Park, where we did shut down the vehicular gates to the park itself as a test to see how it would work, and we left the pedestrian gates open, and we've tried that now for the last week, and it has worked pretty well, although there are still some gatherings that are occurring where there are a number of people gathering in certain areas. And with this weekend being an Easter weekend and understanding that the weather is going to be good, there are a number of folks we are sure who are going to want to hit our parks, which is an important aspect of the stay-at-home orders for folks to be able to get out and walk. However, the congregation, as we all know, is the issue. The city of the county has decided to shut down its parks on Sunday because it's Easter Sunday, and we have looked at it and we've decided to do both Saturday and Sunday to really hone in on the fact that it is important for folks to stay at home during this time, and as the fire chief will be coming up and talking you through some of the numbers that we see and what we have heard from the county health department in terms of the next 2 weeks being of major importance and the most important time to stay at home, we believe that shuttering our parks this weekend will serve us well. We will continue to make daily assessments and implement precautionary measures as needed, and we've done that from the time that this has started, and we will continue to make those assessments and provide you with information. As we move on to the next item, so we, again, intently are focused on providing the community with resources needed to navigate throughout, this unsettling time, and we receive a number of emails and phone messages and direct calls where we do have employees answering the call regarding noncompliance. And I would ask for noncompliance calls, if it's a call and not an email, for folks to call our hotline, and it's 818-548-3301. There are open hours where we do have staff who are answering the phone, but if it's after hours and folks leave a voice message, we are retrieving those voice messages over the weekends during a number of instances and following up accordingly. We move on to the next item. So we, again, intently are...
Well, we're getting some feedback from the telephones, so if you could please put it on mute.
And direct calls where we do have employees answering the call regarding noncompliance. And I would ask for noncompliance calls, if it's a call and not an email, for folks to call our hotline, and it's 818-548-3301. There are open hours. Okay, I apologize for that. And so for noncompliance, to call that number. If it is an emergency situation, of course, we always ask folks to call 911, but if it's non-emergent, to call this hotline. All updates and information related to COVID-19 is on our website, and it can be reached at glendaleca.gov, where we do have updates as they become available and information as it becomes available for the public. We have really tried to respond to emails as they occur, hopefully within 24 to 48 hours, but understanding the size of our city and the necessity for us to sometimes look into some of the items that are brought to our attention, it does take a few days for us to do so before getting back to the citizens of Glendale. And we apologize for not getting back to folks sometimes within 24 hours because we really try. With that, I'd like to ask our fire chief to give you updated information related to the number of cases and the orders that are in place and the importance of the orders. And then like I said earlier, our police chief, Carl Povolitis, will take you through some of the education and enforcement issues that we have dealt with, and we'll wrap it up with the city attorney. With that, Chief Lanzas.
Thank you, Mrs. Spears. Mr. Mayor, members of council, SILVIO, your fire chief. I'd like to briefly provide some updated data related to the numbers as they stand worldwide across our country and specifically here in LA County and in the US. As has been the case for the last several weeks when I've done this, I've provided this PowerPoint several hours before the meeting, and as I sit in the back of the room and wait for my time to be called, the numbers continue to change. So the numbers that will display on your screen will be a little bit outdated from what the actual numbers were here just a couple of minutes ago. Confirmed cases worldwide were at 1,428,428. Deaths from COVID-19, we are at 82,000 plus deaths across the world. Cases have been confirmed in 184 countries to date. The confirmed cases in the United States are 398,185. The confirmed cases in Los Angeles County today is 6,910 cases. Confirmed cases in the city of Glendale are 154. And sadly, we've had 2 confirmed deaths in the city of Glendale. Our rate per 100,000 residents is currently 76.39 per 100,000. I'd like to briefly cover some of the things that the fire department's done. I get many questions about how are our firefighters, how are our first responders, how are you keeping them safe? There's been a lot of media coverage about the FDNY firefighters, the firefighters in Los Angeles City, Orange County, and many of the other departments in Northern California that have suffered some pretty significant employee sickage from this disease. So I'll cover briefly several of the things that we've done here in Glendale. We've created a daily tracking tool that allows us, as the leaders in the organization, to see trends in employee absenteeism, call volume, and ambulance transport fluctuations, as well as other key indicators. We view that report each day. I am very, very proud to say that our firefighters in many organizations throughout the country, chiefs have had to cancel leaves to where employees can't take days off because of the number of employees that they've had to be out. Ours is quite different. We have not had to cancel leave because, frankly, our firefighters are not taking any leave. We haven't had to do that, and I'm proud of their response and proud of how they've reacted and responded and are ready to serve this community as they always have. We have created a drawdown plan that will allow us to tier our staffing should we be impacted by sick employees, as others have done. That will allow us to go everything from reducing an engine company to covering smaller vehicles with less people, and all the way to the opposite of what I just mentioned, where we would go to a 2-platoon system. We currently operate a 3-platoon system. All fire stations have been closed to only essential and emergency public interactions. We have contracted with a vendor to provide disinfection cleaning at each facility on a weekly basis. We have suspended all non-essential activities, including training of 2 or more companies. We have provided and continue to monitor our PPE levels and ensure we stay ahead of any spikes. That's personal protective equipment, it's PPE. We have fully activated our 40-hour command staff and our 40-hour support staff to respond to all things COVID. Our task force within the department meets routinely and is all COVID as we speak today. We have authorized our admin and support and some fire prevention employees to telecommute. We have implemented many policies, procedures, and best practices to reduce our exposure, both within the fire station and when responding to emergencies. Things like we are no longer allowed to wear our boots inside the fire station. Because of the possibility of bringing those contaminants into our fire stations, we are requiring our employees to leave their boots in the garage and wear clean tennis shoes inside of the fire station. We are practicing 1 in, 3 out, which means we send 1 firefighter into confined spaces or small bedrooms and try to bring patients out to a more open air environment. We've reduced our outerwear. We're not requiring our firefighters to wear these uniform shirts, as these carry an additional layer of contamination by our badge, our pens, and all the things that are worn on the outside. We have directed our firefighters to wear simply the t-shirt, easily washed, and we have a lot more of those t-shirts. Those are just a couple of the examples that we've implemented. Our Verdugo dispatchers continue to do an outstanding job screening callers and providing vital information to our responding units. And lastly, we have collaborated with the other 29 fire departments across LA County and our region to closely monitor and track trends which would affect our overall delivery and mutual aid capabilities. And this next slide illustrates a dashboard that I'm extremely proud of. The 30 fire chiefs in LA County got together a little over a week ago, and we're able to put this dashboard together. Every morning, each fire department reports their strength, their ability to provide mutual aid, the number of firefighters they've had tested, the number of firefighters they've had tested positive, how many are awaiting a test, all of those things, so we can collaborate and come together as one region and provide the best service for our county. Really, it's an effort that in most cases would take years to come together, and every fire chief did the right thing, came together, and it's truly a testament to the service that we're providing. I'd like to briefly cover some of the facts about the virus, and then we'll talk briefly about some of the new orders that have been in place and the face coverings. How this virus spreads. There's currently no vaccine to prevent the coronavirus 2019 COVID-19. The best way to prevent the illness is to avoid being exposed to the virus itself. The virus is thought to spread mainly from person to person between people who are in close contact with each other within about 6 feet. Through respiratory droplet produced when an infected person coughs or sneezes or talks is where this virus is being spread, whether that's from the droplets landing on another person or on a surface and then being touched by that person and then touching their face. Some recent studies have suggested that the COVID-19 may be spread by people who are non-symptomatic, who do not have symptoms. And that's a change from early on that is very, very important. On Sunday, I watched the president's coronavirus task force meeting where Dr. Fauci spoke, and I want to make sure I preface this. He said it was his opinion, and he didn't have factual proof to support this, but I trust what he says. As the nation's top infectious control doctor, I think that he's probably the most versed in what he talks about, and he said that he believes that across the United States, 25 to 50% of the people may have this virus and not know it because they don't show outward symptoms. So that's why a lot of the things are changing. That's why the face coverings are now coming, and I'll speak briefly about that. Everyone should clean their hands often. Wash your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds, especially after you have been in a public place or after blowing your nose, coughing, or sneezing. If soap and water are not readily available, use hand sanitizer that contains at least 60% alcohol. Cover all surfaces of your hands and rub them together until they feel dry. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth with unwashed hands. And it's hard to do. As I'm sitting here touching this podium, it's hard to not touch your face, and it's something you have to really be conscious and careful about. But if you just continue to think that the virus can be anywhere and you don't touch your face with your hands after touching a surface or since washing your hands, it's the best way to reduce the possibility of bringing the virus into your body. Everyone should avoid close contact with people. Stay home as much as possible. I really want to emphasize what our city manager said. I think our community has done a fantastic job. As I drive the streets and our firefighters are out in the streets responding to emergencies, our community as a whole, we're a big city, has done a really good job. 200,000 people, the majority of the people are staying home, but we can do better. And I'm going to continue to challenge the community to do better. This week and the week following are critical to us flattening this curve. What the experts are saying is we will continue to see the death count rise this week. But the important number to follow is the new cases number. The last 3 days in LA County, our new cases has been moderated, I would say. The climb has slowed. I don't want to celebrate yet, but I think it's a good sign that staying at home is working and that our people are listening and that the warnings are being heard and people are doing their part. Never in our country's existence has something like this been so important for each one of us to play a part in. The world wars, we've depended on our military. Earthquakes, we've depended on the professionals that do that for a living, whether rescuing people from trapped places. This one is dependent on every single person, regardless of your work, regardless of your background. Every person can help us get on the winning side of this disease by simply staying home. This week, if you don't have to leave to get gas, to get groceries, to get medicine, if you could stay home this week and into next, it will truly help us flatten the curve. And a point that I want to make is that we have to continue to do that after this period. Again, what the experts are saying is that if we flatten it, but then we release everything too quickly, we will see that dip in the flattening, and then we'll see the spike come later than we anticipated, which could be worse than even before. Put distance between yourself and other people. Again, I want to emphasize, remember that some people without symptoms may be spreading this virus. Keep distance from others, especially important for people who are at higher risk or sick. Face coverings. Originally, if you remember the first time that I spoke about COVID-19, when we had our three community hospital leaders here with doctors from their facilities, the face coverings was, as I touched my face, I just did it again. The face coverings were recommended only for people who were sick. The thought is that the face coverings help a person who is sick from not transferring their germs and the disease to other people. That is still the case today. That has not changed. What I mentioned earlier about Dr. Fauci thinking that the large majority of this is within our community and within our country, that's why they're recommending everybody to wear the face coverings, because they believe that enough people have the virus that asking everybody to put a face covering on, and I believe the LA mayor came out today with an order for the face coverings, I believe this is the best way to reduce the spread of the disease amongst people, especially who don't have symptoms. So when should you wear a face covering? When you must be in public for essential activities such as shopping at the grocery store, picking up medicine, wear a face covering. Face covering does not eliminate the need to physically distance yourself from others. I think this weekend when the face coverings came out on Friday or Saturday, we saw a spike throughout the areas. I know where I live, I saw more people on the streets the next day. I believe it was a bit of a misunderstanding where people felt this sense of security. Now I have this face covering, now I can go out and about. Absolutely not. Again, the message that I'm trying to get out there this week is don't go out unless you absolutely have to. And if you have to, wear a face covering. Everyone should stay in place, maintain your space, and cover your face. It's a little catchy and a little rhymey, and I want to push it again, so I'll say it one more time. Stay in place, maintain your space, cover your face. The fire department's here for you. We are fully staffed and ready to respond to any emergency. What we ask of our public is stay home for us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm available for questions.
Chief, if before we have the police chief come up, if you can touch on testing and how folks get tested, if they don't have a healthcare provider, going through telemedicine, possibly at Glendale Memorial Hospital, et cetera, just to get that information out there again.
Yes. So our three local hospitals, Verdugo Hills Hospital, Glendale Memorial Hospital, and Glendale Adventist Hospital, are all testing. We also have 3 clinics in the city of Glendale that are providing testing. Glendale Memorial is one of the sites that has partnered with Los Angeles County to provide the testing to any Los Angeles resident, regardless of city zip code. They are providing the service through a telemed. If you go through to Glendale Memorial's webpage, you will download an application. You will input your information. You will have a telemed visit with a doctor who will determine whether or not you require the test. They will send the order to the hospital. The hospital will call you back with an appointment time. You drive through, and the test takes less than 30 seconds. To date, we have had 6 firefighters tested, several of those through the Glendale Memorial site. I'm proud to say that 5 of those have returned negative. We are waiting on one who was tested today, and I'm hoping and praying that that one comes back negative. But the Glendale Memorial site is a very easy process. Download the app, visit a doctor on the telemed site, get your appointment, and go get the test. And the testing is changing rapidly. There's a lot of new tests that are coming forward. There's a 15-minute test that has been released recently. There's the Abbott test that's forthcoming. And I think it will become more and more prevalent and more accessible to everybody to get the test. The Los Angeles mayor also announced this weekend that previously they were trying to provide the test to higher risk people, our seniors, and those people with higher risk for contracting this disease. That has been taken away. He is now providing the test to anybody who qualifies to receive it, regardless of your risk category.
Chief, two things I'd like you to address. One is, it bears repeating the special service that the fire department is providing to residents who cannot go out. And the second is, what should residents do if they feel ill? Should they call the emergency number? Should they call their primary hospital? And what can they expect from your firefighters in that regard?
Great question, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The first question, we are, again, I'm proud, very proud of our organization. On March 17th, I believe it was St. Patty's Day, March 14th, 17th. On March 17th, I sent an email to the organization asking for volunteers to step up and help us provide meal pickup and delivery service to our seniors and other medically vulnerable people within our community who we really wanted to encourage to stay home. That next day, I had 30+ volunteers that had already responded to the email. To date, I have over 100 volunteers. These are firefighters, dispatchers, fire prevention employees, chief officers, administrative staff, office and support staff throughout the organization, as well as several people through other departments within the city, community groups that have volunteered to provide this service. What we do is you call 818-548-4814. We basically take your order. You provide that order to one of our office staff personnel. We will ask you a series of questions to ensure that you do truly need it and that you don't have other means of obtaining the service yourself. The next day, we dispatch volunteers, essentially. These are individuals that are coming in off duty. We give them the order. The Glendale Firefighters Association partnered with us, as well as the Glendale Fire Foundation, who gave us the money to be able to provide up front to buy the groceries, and then we give the individual that we're delivering the groceries or the medicine the receipt. They pay us for their groceries. There's no fee for the service, and we are happy to do it. To date, we have helped about 85 residents within our community with this service. And I can tell you that every time I meet with everybody that goes out, they actually get their orders from me, and I chose to do that because I want to thank everybody that's coming on their day off. So they get the order from me, I give them the shopping list, and then they come back and give it to a member of my staff, and everyone that comes back is proud to do what they're doing. These people really need it. 2 individuals that went out today helped. One helped a lady that was 90+ years old that actually, ironically, they thought maybe she was having a medical condition when he got there. Luckily, she wasn't. But it's been a very good service. We're going to continue to do it. As long as I have volunteers, we're going to commit to doing it, and I'm really proud of our organization for doing so. The second point is when you feel ill. If somebody feels ill and has symptoms of COVID-19, the first thing they should do is call their healthcare provider. Call their doctor. The majority of the doctors now are providing a telemed type service where you could use a phone, whether it be FaceTime or just talking via the phone, and essentially get a consultation from your doctor and determine whether or not you need to go get a test, whether or not you need to go see the doctor, or whether or not you need to call 911. Under very few circumstances will a doctor tell you to call 911. We really are trying to encourage our community, and they've done a great job. Our call stats show that they've done a great job of not calling 911 when there's not a true emergency. A cough, a fever, not really a true emergency that requires 911 service. It may require doctor service, but not 911 service. So that's what individuals within our community should do.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Council members, if you don't mind, I'll take questions at the end of the presentation, unless you've got something really burning you want to put to the chief at this point.
Mayor, I just have one question.
Yes, Ms. Devine.
Mrs. Devine. I got a call today. You were mentioning that you deliver meals. Do you actually take like restaurant orders if they want instead of groceries, do you do meals?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Councilmember Devine, no, we are not doing meals, and the reason we're not is, again, we're using volunteers. They're coming in off duty. The meals would potentially be, you know, an every day, 3 times a day type service, and we just don't have the capacity to do that. But many of the restaurants in town that are offering service are offering free delivery of their meals, and other applications that are widely available. Uber Eats and some of those others do provide a delivery service.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Ms. Beers?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we will go to our Police Chief Povolitis for an update.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Carl Povolitis, Chief of Police. Just a quick update on what the police department is doing and its thing. Again, we are fully staffed and we are fully field-based at this point in time to protect the community. Instead, all the men and women of the Glendale Police Department are out there on a daily basis and continuing to patrol the streets. We've made a few operational changes, and so we're asking for a little bit of additional cooperation from the community and some understanding on how we're doing that. We've gone into some non-traditional modes. One of the things with the open space being closed and all of the trails being closed and activity at the parks, one of the ways that we found to be able to keep an eye on that is to use our air support units. So you will see the helicopter patrolling our parks, our commercial areas, our open space, and our trails. We've also asked our motor officers that you normally see doing traffic enforcement on the streets. Some of them have taken a couple of our specialized bikes, and they are also up patrolling the trails, something that's a little bit different. And I'm very glad and proud that those officers are willing to go up and do something different in times. As I said, but these are unusual times, and it requires an unusual response. We are also, you will see a very high level of high visibility patrol. One of the things that's been asked of the officers and that they're doing is to keep an eye on where people might be congregating, and that right now is especially grocery stores, markets, and those types of places where people are waiting in line patiently for their food. So you will see a lot of police officers in those areas. Occasionally, they're going to get a reminder for social distancing. We have been out actively contacting all the managers of the grocery stores to remind them of the social distancing and requirements, and to let them know that we are there to help support all of those essential services along the way. We're also working in conjunction with community development and neighborhood services for the complaints or concerns that come into the hotline. If it's during the week, community development is doing most of the follow-up on those. However, it's a weekend or after hours, then the police department will also go check locations, or if community development needs our assistance in determining whether a business should be open or closed, or whether there are issues of social distancing that might be there. So, as I said, we've gotten some of the stuff off the internet where people have been concerned that there are crowds in a particular business, and we will send officers out to do that and remind. But again, our primary focus at this point has been education, and now I'm going to say it's encouragement, encouraging people to comply with the emergency orders, because that is essential to keeping our community safe. Just to kind of take a look, just to share with everybody a few photographs from the helicopter. That one happens to be the sports complex. They actually have a very good view from up there. They can cover the city in a very short period of time. They will routinely check the Americana, all of our parks, all of our trails, and so that one happens to be the sports complex. This one, a few people, if they've ever hiked, might recognize one of the trails up off of Brand Park. But one of the things that you will also, that the helicopter also has, is it has a very loud public address system. If there are people that are up hiking where they're not supposed to be hiking, the helicopter is going to ask and encourage your compliance via that public address system. If that is insufficient to get somebody off the trail, then they will coordinate with our units on the ground or our motor officers to come seek that compliance in a little bit more of a direct manner. But it has become a very good tool, and it allows us to help assess if we're getting complaints about a particular park, to actually give us a bird's eye view of what the activity looks like and make that assessment, and then deploy our resources appropriately. I will concur that most people are staying home. The observations from the officers that are out there, the observations of myself driving around, is not the majority, the vast majority of this community is complying with those emergency orders. And what we're seeing is that our calls for service which in January, before we were dealing with the COVID-19 crisis, and part of February, which were trending upwards, actually suddenly trended down with everybody being home. And so that's actually a good thing. And at least for the last month, it looks like our crime rate has also trended down. But we're also monitoring some other things. One of the challenges that we have is we're asking everybody to be safer at home and to stay within the same household. Sometimes I refer to it, there's a period at which cabin fever kicks in. And so we are actually tracking our domestic disturbance calls, which have been a little bit up this year. But as I said, we're only a few days into April, but we're noticing an increase in calls. Please don't take this that we're arresting people. These are not necessarily situations that have developed to the level of an arrest, but it is one of those things that we're tracking, and I think it's important to send the message while everybody's staying together in the same household. A little extra patience is going to be really, really important, because it's very important that we all stay at home. There are a couple of things. As I said, the other thing that was kind of interesting, I know COVID-19 sort of hit the world a little bit earlier. One of the other things we noticed an increase in and has finally dropped off is we would get calls to check on people, a lot of times from out of state. And for the first part of this year, we were checking on a lot of folks. A lot of these folks were elderly, were people that they had not been heard, or they're used to sending an email and getting a response, and they hadn't gotten a response back. And part of what we've done is we've gone out, we've knocked on the doors, asked them to get back in touch with the relatives, just to let them know that they're okay. But that had gone way up this year, and it said this month so far we're down a little bit in that. Some of the things that we are doing differently, because we're asking for everybody's cooperation out here, is said the vast majority of people are complying with this, but we've changed our operations just a little bit. So there are some calls that we may choose to do by telephone. So don't be surprised if an officer, as opposed to showing up at your door for what we call a cold report, something that happened the night before, might actually just get taken by telephone. We have some people that are taking care of that. If we are responding to your location, you may be asked to please step outside, and so we can conduct our investigation outside. That is for the safety of everybody, both the police officer and the people that we are dealing with. And so again, we're asking for your patience and your cooperation in that adjustment and the way that we're doing things. But I will tell you that we are here to protect the community, and that has happened. While the vast majority of people have in fact been in compliance with that, and I will say for the most part, there's not been a lot of traffic on the streets. Occasionally, we have seen people who have decided that maybe that this is the time to take the opportunity that when something like Glen Oaks is wide open, that they should go and drive at a high rate of speed. Right. We are enforcing those laws. Just last night, we had 2 people racing at over 65 miles an hour down Glen Oaks. Both of them were issued citations. Both of those cars were impounded last night. We have had a couple other instances like that. And I got to tell you, when we're asking, from the police department's perspective, the fire department's perspective, the city's perspective, the best thing you can do is stay home. That is really, really important. This is not a time, to go out and meet friends. This is not a time to have parties at your house. This is not a time for gathering. This is the time to have that social distance. And we are here to help remind people of that. So if you have a police officer that, either walks up somewhere within 6 feet of you and says, hey, would you please break it up, or would you please move on? We are there trying to keep you safe and issue those reminders to do that. The only time you really should be leaving your house under the emergency orders is to conduct an essential activity. And in that case, we're asking, please drive carefully. As said, we are out there to enforce the traffic laws. Please remember that there are a few people that their break is walking around the neighborhood, and so there are still pedestrians out there. And so obeying the traffic laws and paying extra attention is still very, very important. Said, I will just conclude with this. This is the critical issue of our time, and we all have a role to play in this one, each and every single one of us. And it's important what we do, because the health of our community absolutely depends on that. And so, as your police chief, and on behalf of the men and women of the police department, we are asking that you please comply with those emergency orders, and that if we're out there to remind you of something, please remember we're there to remind you to comply with those for your safety and the safety of your friends, neighbors, and relatives, and that your cooperation is greatly appreciated.
Chief, can you touch on if someone is not adhering to the orders and you have provided that education, and I'm not saying this has happened yet, and maybe it has, what are the levels, in terms of if folks are just not adhering to the orders that are in place, and you have had calls for service in a particular business, residence, whatever it may be, what next steps are within your purview?
So as I said, our first step has always been on the education. As I said, now I'm using the term encouragement to gain compliance with that. However, all of those emergency orders do carry the force of law. The police department is authorized to enforce those. They are misdemeanors. They do carry a fine of up to $1,000, and they can potentially carry some jail time with that. So if we have people that will not comply with the orders in terms of the education and the encouragement and the strong suggestions to comply, we do have the ability to issue citations and, if necessary, make an arrest.
Thank you, Chief. Ms. Beers?
Yes, sir. We're going to ask.
We can put that slide up with the orders. It's a couple slides down. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of council, Ms. Beers asked me to summarize the status of the emergency orders. Obviously, the primary one as it relates to the discussion we've had is the county's stay safer at home emergency order, which governs sort of general activity. And that one, it was originally adopted, I believe, on March 19th and subsequently amended or strengthened to ban all gatherings. If you recall, initially it was 10 or less, and then, or 10 or more was banned, and then now it's just all gatherings unless it's an essential activity or essential business. And then even though within an essential activity or essential business, persons engaging in those activities are required to maintain and practice social distancing. I wanted to touch a little bit on some of the other emergency orders that the council has adopted, or the city manager is the director of emergency services, which have subsequently been ratified by the city council. So I'll take these a little. Well, actually, they're up correctly. So the obviously there was an order adopted, subsequently ratified by the council, closing city trails and the sports and play courts, fields, and equipment. And as Ms. Beers noted, that's going to be extended to the city parks this weekend. Then also the closure of the adult daycare facilities remains in effect. With respect to the rent increase freeze, there is a moratorium on rent increases for those properties that are not exempted from the Costa-Hawkins Rental Act. So any multifamily dwelling that was built before February 1, 1995, as well as so anything built after February 1, 1995 is exempt, and then single-family homes and individual condominiums are also exempt. And that's obviously we went as broad as we could. Most other, looking at what other cities did, and also looking at the Costa-Hawkins Act, it appears pretty clear we were preempted from extending it further than we did. In addition, the eviction moratorium was also implemented initially by the Director of Emergency Services and then subsequently ratified by the council. We've had a couple of discussions on that. If you recall, the initial moratorium was required, is a ban on the filing of an unlawful detainer action, and required tenants to provide 14 days written notice to their tenant explaining the reason why it had to be a COVID-19 related basis, including such things as having been laid off or losing hours at your job or having additional child care expenses. Subsequent to that, the governor imposed a statewide eviction moratorium. And the key difference with that moratorium, as we explained, was that the moratorium allows the tenant to provide any notice as prior to the due date for the rent, and up to 7 days after the due date of the rent, to provide notice to his or her landlord as to the inability to pay, and then similarly provide documentation. The city's order, as well as the state's order, allows up to 6 months for the tenant to repay. So it's not a forgiveness; it's a delay in the payment of rent. And some other cities have extended that to 12 months, and I know that there might be some desire by council members to have a discussion on that particular point. In addition, I wanted to advise the council of the California Judicial Council's action yesterday related to eviction. So statewide, the California courts will not be allowing the filing of any unlawful detainer action. I should say they will not be allowing the serving of summons of any unlawful detainer action, which, as you know, kicks off the unlawful detainer action. So any eviction proceeding starting as of yesterday cannot be filed during the period of the statewide emergency issued by the governor. In addition, any existing unlawful detainer action that had been filed prior to yesterday has been automatically extended for 60 days. And these orders are, there are a number of orders. There's also an order in that particular California Judicial Council order, which extended delayed enforcement of judicial foreclosures, suspended judicial foreclosure actions during the pendency of the emergency. So this rule that I just summarized as it relates to evictions and all the rules that were set forth by the CJC yesterday remain in effect for 90 days after the governor declares the state of emergency related to COVID-19 pandemic to be lifted. So no unlawful, unless this is subsequently amended by the CJC, no unlawful detainer actions will be able to be filed at all until 90 days after the governor lifts the statewide emergency declaration. So that is certainly broader than what we have and what other cities have as it relates to just even if there's a rent issue, no evictions will be occurring for at least a period that equals the time limit of the emergency as well as 90 days thereafter. So those are all of the orders that were implemented that I've discussed that were implemented by the Director of Emergency Services or by the Council are set to expire on April 30th. Some of the statewide order, the governor's statewide order goes till May 31st. So that's potentially another subject that the council can provide further direction on. As we've noted in the past, the city manager, as the Director of Emergency Services, has the authority to make emergency orders subject to future ratification. So if there's a desire on the part of the council to modify some of our orders, we would take direction and then put that into an order and issue it and then come back subsequently for ratification. Happy to answer other questions, but that's a summary of the status of the orders that exist and govern both shelter in place or safer at home, as well as our eviction and rent freeze and some of the other orders that we've issued.
Mr. Garcia, how about actions regarding how we conduct our meetings?
Thank you for asking that. So there is obviously, as part of this emergency, the council would have the authority to suspend or modify any of its existing rules regarding the governing of meetings, as long as they comply with the Brown Act as it's been implemented by the governor's executive orders on the Brown Act. And I think the one you may be referring is our 5-minute oral communication period that's set by resolution. But the council certainly, as part of this emergency order, given the necessity to conduct business in a timely and efficient fashion, and to allow some discretion on the part of the mayor or the presiding officer of any of the meetings to reduce that time as necessary to get through the items on the agenda. So with that, if there's a desire on the part of the council to do that, you can make that change as well.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Ms. Devine?
Yes, the city attorney was kind of breaking up when he was explaining the last part about the Brown Act. Can he repeat what he was saying? Sorry, he was breaking up and I couldn't quite understand what he was saying.
Okay, we will ask him to repeat the very last part.
The microphone, this microphone that carries the sound is right next to me, so when I shuffle my papers, it sometimes gets cut off. I apologize for that. So with respect to the oral communications, it's by resolution, it is established at 5 minutes. We've pretty much adhered to that because it's a matter of legal principle because it's set forth in a resolution. But my comment was that the council at this time would have the authority to modify that during the period of this emergency to allow whoever is the presiding officer to make adjustments in that as necessary for the efficient operation of these meetings.
So an example is if we have 60 callers for the public comment, affording them 5 minutes each would take 3 hours.
That's correct.
The chairman of the meeting may modify the time limit to make sure the meeting ends at an appropriate time.
Correct. But I would say that it would take an action of the council
To approve that?
to approve that.
Okay. Okay. Now, council members, I have two members of the public who have been wishing to chime in. We don't have any other reports. If we can take the two members of the public, and then we'll have council comments and questions, if that's all right. The first speaker is Karen Kwok. Can you hear us, Karen?
Hi.
Yes, Karen,
I'm going to
you're
be
on.
blunt. Yeah, I'm going to be blunt because there are a lot of things that need to be said, and I don't hear anyone else saying them. I regret to remind you that poverty kills more people than COVID-19 ever will. This is why the suddenly jobless people of this city are more afraid of becoming hungry and homeless than we are of getting sick. To be perfectly clear, on a scale of 0 to 100, where 100 is high, this is where I stand. Fear of getting the novel coronavirus, 0. Fear of getting evicted from my apartment, 100. Your so-called moratorium on evictions is no such thing. It requires that renters repay back rent in 6 months. Any tenant can tell you that if I can't pay next month's rent, I won't be able to pay that May rent on top of the November rent on November 1st. So if you stand by that ordinance, it just postpones mass evictions to November, just ahead of the start of winter. You need to change that repayment plan, extend it to 99 years. The 99-year contract comes from a world of property leasing, so it is appropriate. It is not fair for government officials to take away our income with one hand and still force us to pay our bills with the other hand. If you do this, politicians are effectively making us the economic sacrifice in the name of public health. And if I am being thrown into poverty in the name of public health, then who is benefiting from the sacrifice? Who is the public that benefits from my losses? It is certainly not me. It is not my health that you are saving. None of our public servants seem to grasp this basic fact, probably because none of you are the designated sacrifice. You are all more concerned about the income being lost by my landlord than about the income you took away from me. So this is the correct sequence of events. First, you provide relief for us, the suddenly jobless people and renters of the city. Second, our landlords ask for relief from their banks if they need refinancing. Third, the banks ask for relief from the federal government. We all know how much the federal government loves to bail out banks, so let the federal government fix this national problem. Because 70,000 hungry and homeless people in this city will most definitely be a local problem. That is a problem that the city needs to fix. Okay, you know what? There's a lot that needs to be said that cannot be said in 3 minutes. So I propose that you form a citizens committee because you desperately need to hear the perspective of renters on this issue so that we can have a genuine dialogue. Having a panel of 5 homeowners decide policy on renters would be exactly like having a committee of 5 men deciding what rights women have, or having a committee of 5 white people decide how many rights that non-white people have. Thank you. That's all for now.
Thank you, Karen. The next speaker is Haley Hopkins. Can you hear us? You're on the line.
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. My name's Haley, and I'm a resident of Glendale, also calling to express my concern about the effect of this virus on renters. And you've heard from me before, I'm going to keep calling until something's done about this to actually help protect people. The city of Glendale needs rent forgiveness as an immediate response to this pandemic. Sheltering in place has made it impossible for so many people to earn any form of income. As you know, a lot of folks struggled to or just completely couldn't pay rent last month. And guess what? That's going to keep happening, and it will continue to become more and more difficult for more and more people. You all have an obligation to implement rent forgiveness for the duration of this crisis. I know that Councilmember Paula Devine has voiced concern about the domino effect that renters not being able to pay is going to have on mortgage owners. But I just don't understand why the brunt of everything should fall on renters. Why are we expected to just figure this out and be responsible for keeping everyone else afloat while we ourselves are struggling? If I could pull money out of thin air, believe me, I would. And I have a good relationship with my landlord. I want him to be supported too. But as a renter, I feel like I have to advocate for myself and other renters first because we are truly at the bottom of this totem pole. As city council members, you're all in positions of power, so I'm asking that instead of telling me how complicated things are or, saying that you hope for the best for folks like me, or saying that providing mortgage relief is not within your jurisdictional powers, to use these positions of power that you're in to get in touch with the people above you, like Catherine Barger, our district's representative at the LA County Board of Supervisors, to make these requests on behalf of people like me. These people are much more likely to listen to you than they are to listen to someone like me. And if they can get mortgage relief legislation through, then there's no excuse for why you can't implement rent forgiveness to this city. Again, please use the power that you have as elected officials so that you're doing everything you can to directly support the people who elected you into office in the first place. We depend on you right now, and a lot of people are being deeply let down, and that's only going to continue happening if renters don't get any form of protection. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like the lines are lighting up. So at some point, I'm going to stop the intake of calls and go to council for comments. The next speaker is Victory Valentine.
Yes.
You are on the air addressing the council.
Okay. Someone else is talking. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, ma'am, but turn down your TV or your computer. You're the only one on the line.
Okay, I will do that if I can find a notch. Okay, I turned it down. Mayor NAJARIAN, I have a big surprise to do with the coronavirus. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you. This is your time.
In March, before the last rain, just in time, Glendale Public Works appeared at the Derby House at 2567 Chevy Chase. They swept the impassable sidewalk. Just days later, stay at home and social distancing came to order, and our city left on vacation. The 300 feet long sidewalk is 2.5 feet wide and was impassable. A big deal, you would say? Yes, because residents were forced to step into the traffic lanes in a blind curve. This stretch is known as the dead man's curve. Now, children on bicycles, families, pets, couples, young and old, are safe on this stretch of Chevy Chase, walking possibly only in one line. I am looking for the individual who reported, who called in the unbearable situation, as it is saving lives. Saving lives during the pandemic. He or she is my hero on Chevy Chase Street. You ask, during this pandemic, a small effort, insignificant? No. To me, saving lives from the other virus, the reckless drivers, yes, they are the Glendale virus, is a big deal. Everybody talks about heroes. We need to put a name on this hero that was able to sweep that stretch and make it open to the public. That's all I have to say. I'm looking for the hero on Chevy Chase stretch. I do have a question for LA Mayor, but I don't know if you want to hear that.
No, he's not on the line, ma'am, so...
Yeah, but his trash has been drenched, and the trash is everywhere. He now delivered a porta potty and a wash basin, an Eagle Rock on Broadway, and there are no homeless there. They're all in shelters. Only trash is sitting there that should have been picked up. What are they not doing? It's going to be malaria next. It's all to do with COVID virus. So thank you. I'm surprised I got through.
Thank you, ma'am.
Forgive me my accent.
No, we love your accent.
And the Glendale, maybe Pasadena can cure me, that course that you're going to offer, maybe they can cure me of my accent.
No.
Glendale City College does not have such a course.
My mom has an accent just like you, ma'am. Thank you.
All right.
Next speaker is Herbert Milano.
Hi, good evening, Mayor NAJARIAN and members of the City Council. My name is Herbert Milano. I'm speaking to a significant issue for Glendale having to do with the housing issue and the significant problems that tenants have today in meeting those obligations to pay the rent. As you know, Glendale has about 2/3 of its population in multifamily housing, primarily rental. And this current wave of layoffs has hit these tenants incredibly hard. I speak to you as a landlord in Glendale for over 32 years, and I believe that the city has an opportunity to create some truly creative and innovative ways that can solve the problem. I would like to present later on in writing to the City Council a potential of actually saving the situation to about 20,000 tenants. I would imagine that about a third of the tenant population would be in severe need at this time. And I think that there is a way of actually finding a solution that would provide a significant amount of relief to these tenants and also to the landlords who are also facing a significant number of tenants who are not paying the rent. For those individuals who are incredibly worried and concerned about how to pay the rent, I feel fairly confident that there is a solution that actually can be created, but it's too long for me to present it right now during this session of oral communications. I would like to see the city, though, tap into the knowledge base that is there within the city with regard to experience in these housing issues or in the other issues that you're facing during this coronavirus emergency. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Milano. And I'm going to go to the council members for questions and comments. Who would like to go first?
Hey, I'm fine if I can go first.
Ms. Devine, you have the
Devine?
floor. Yes, you do.
Thank you very much. Thank you. First of all, I want to thank Chief LANZAS and Povolitis for their efforts with fire and the police. And I'm happy to hear I've been asked about fines for non-compliance, and it's good to hear. And what I'd like to ask the chief is, if you are called or you make a call to or stop at a commercial business and you warn them to keep the distancing protocol, et cetera, and you have to go back a second time, how many times do you go back before you fine them?
We're going to ask the chief to come up, Ms. Devine, and he heard the question, I believe. And Chief?
Mayor Najarian, council members, Councilmember Devine, it really depends on the individual circumstance. We have not had to go back and fine anybody at this time. For the most part, I will tell you that when we've sent officers out to those locations, sometimes people did not realize that they either did not need to be closed or that when we did. But if we have to make multiple attempts, then we would move to the enforcement mode.
Oh, okay. All right. That's good to know. I think it's really important. I've been, when the weather's been nice, I've been walking through the neighborhood, and Chief, you can sit down. And I see a lot of people with masks, and they're standing right close to each other. So I think it's really important that we emphasize that even if you're wearing a mask, you should keep that social distance, that 6 feet. I mean, that's really important. As the chief said, people think that's like a security blanket, but it really isn't. And it's so important to let people know. I want to ask the city attorney, are you putting all of the information, especially concerning the rent freeze and the eviction, in a written document that's stating all of this information and sending it to tenants and landlords so that they understand what we're doing?
If I could touch on that, and the city attorney can fill in. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Devine, staff from Community Development Housing Division has prepared a letter to be sent to all landlords at this time, and we will have to work on something for tenants as well, but the landlord letter is ready as of yesterday and getting ready to be sent out before the end of the week. And I don't know if you have any additional information to that.
Just the information, obviously, it's all on all of our platforms that are out there.
It's going out. Today, and this is another issue that I've been confronted with, and that's our grocery store workers. And today, Mayor Garcetti is making it a demand that grocery workers wear masks. And I'd like to see that happen here in Glendale. They are meeting and close to a lot of people. And I think it's time that we require grocery workers and Ralph's and Vons and all of our grocery stores to wear masks. And I also want to recommend the plexiglass. I know that Ralph's, I think down by City Hall, has the plexiglass dividers. I'd like to see something like that in our grocery stores. I think it's really important because they may be carriers and don't even know it, and they're interacting, within 2 feet of customers. So I'd like to get my fellow colleagues to comment on that. And the third thing is that I had brought up this 12-month delay on repayment of rent, and we said that we would put that on hold, and I'd like to bring it up again. I think it would be, I understand that the renters will be hard-pressed to pay back rent in 6 months that they've, accumulated from the freeze, and I'd like to see if I have some support from my colleagues for a 12-month delay on that as well. And my final question is about seniors receiving meals. I had asked the chief about this, LANZAS, but is there a number where seniors can call to receive Meals on Wheels or meals delivered to their homes?
Yes.
Senior services?
Yes, they can call the 548-3301 number, Councilmember Devine, and we will assist them in terms of where they need to call and fill a very short form to be part of the senior meal program, where deliveries occur on a weekly basis, and seniors receive meals for 7 days at one time. So it's once a week, the delivery occurs, and they have a meal for 7 days.
Okay, great. And finally, I would support cutting the 5-minute oral communication to 3 minutes. And those are my comments. Thank you. Good job to staff.
Thank you, Ms. Devine. Who would like to go next? Mr. Brotman?
Yes, if I could. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a number of things I wanted to discuss, but I'm going to kind of break them into 2 categories, and maybe we could take them separately. First is just on the, the immediate public health crisis, and then I want to get to the renter issues and kind of the economic crisis that is probably a bigger issue ultimately than the coronavirus itself. But I wanted to ask Chief Povolitis first. When we're talking about businesses that are non-essential, are these businesses, like I'm thinking, florists or dry cleaners or eyeglasses stores, are they allowed to operate by appointment? Can somebody call and say, I want flowers, or call and say, I want to get my eyeglasses repaired and go in and out? Is that permitted?
So, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Brotman, it's going to depend on the type of business. If it's a non-essential business, it's supposed to be closed. There are some nuances to essential and non-essential in some of the support roles. But some businesses that are essential are operating by appointment only, because if they are doing that, no matter who's open, if they're open as an essential business, you still need to maintain social distancing. And so like eyeglass repair and that type of stuff would be okay on an appointment basis.
And I think dry cleaning.
And dry cleaning, dry cleaning and cleaning is defined in all the orders as a essential business.
Okay, and how about things like a florist or a gift shop, or I don't know, something like that?
For gift shops, no. We're working on the florist one. There is a dispute that we're working on that in terms of a notification that went to some, not from the city of Glendale, but by a trade association, saying that because they support certain other things that they might be open. So we're sorting that out. But most of them have chosen to close.
Okay. One of the reasons I asked the question is because somebody informed me that we have 2 gun stores in Glendale that we have not deemed non-essential, and they are open. I guess they're open for by appointment only, I understand. I don't really understand why we would consider those essential. I would rather see those not be doing business at all. Maybe that's something that the rest of the council can discuss later on. But I just wanted to put that out there that it doesn't really strike me as something that's essential if some of these other things are non-essential.
I don't know if anyone is stepping up to answer that, Mr. Brotman, but
Okay. I'd like to look at it. I know that LA County, the Sheriff's Department declared that gun stores are non-essential, and I think
That's not correct.
he's getting into a little hot water over that. But anyway, I wanted to.
They actually, Councilmember Brotman, that was the initial statement that came up from LA County Sheriff's Department, and then they changed their mind a few days later and pulled back on the initial order that they had in place. And so that no longer is an order that is in place from the Sheriff's Department in LA County.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. All right. Thanks for letting me know. Another thing I wanted to ask about is, I know we've closed the fire roads going up the Verdugo Mountains, and so we can't take our walks up there. So the problem that I find is that I'm walking in places where sidewalks are very narrow, and somebody runs past me from behind. I don't even see them coming, and they're running and they're huffing and puffing, and who knows what kinds of stuff is coming out of their mouth and nose, and they're right next to me. And I don't really know what we do about that, but I kind of feel we have some park-type spaces that are more conducive to the kind of exercise a lot of people want to do than many of our sidewalks. Again, I don't know the answer to that, to how to deal with that, but I just just put it out as a problem that we face when we want to go for walks. Some of the neighborhood streets that are, sometimes it's safe to walk in the street now. There are not many cars, but still, I don't think we want to encourage people to walk in the streets. The sidewalks are very narrow. I don't know if there's anything you can say about that.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Brotman, if I can possibly have a statement related to that and understanding exactly what you're describing on my street, where I don't have any sidewalks either, and a number of people have taken to the streets for exercise and just getting out of the house and parking on residential streets where they don't live. A number of nuanced issues I think that we have seen in the last 3 weeks as we have either shuttered certain areas within the city by way of trails, and even before that, these issues were happening. I don't profess to have the, a very good answer on it outside of using good judgment and wearing a face cover to protect yourself and to protect others. Our desire to move forward with the closure of the parks just this weekend, and again, we have had a lot of push from certain parts of the community to completely shut down some of our parks, and we haven't done that because of the importance for folks to get out and exercise and have the opportunity to be in some green space outside of narrow streets and streets with no sidewalks, or just to get away from their neighborhood to have the enjoyment of our parks. And we haven't closed down our parks. And the weekend, this coming weekend's decision was based on just information that we received from LA County in terms of this week being very pivotal in terms of the stay-at-home orders, as well as knowing that it's going to be better weather than we've experienced in Sunday, and knowing that folks will want to come out to help mitigate some of the enforcement and education measures from the police department so that they can focus in other areas within the community. We kind of moved to the decision to close this weekend and then, of course, be back open again on Monday. But again, I don't have a good answer for some of our sidewalks and narrower streets, except for just protecting ourselves the best that we can and having covers on our face and hoping and asking others that they do the same.
Yeah, and I don't know that there's a solution. Again, just expressing some frustration that I'm hearing from people, and also that I've experienced myself, is where a fire road seems like a very nice, wide open, great place to walk, and the sidewalk may be, very narrow and not a very safe place to walk. And it's frustrating when you see those instances where you're kind of putting people in a position they have to walk in a place that's less safe than something that's out there that appears to be safer. But I understand there are a lot of different considerations. I just wanted to make that point.
If I can just touch on the fire roads, Councilmember Brotman. The fire roads, I will tell you, in terms of the trails, the decision to close the trails was very specific based on the number of people that were congregating on the trails a few weeks ago. And the numbers of people from air support that we were able to see who were congregating on our trails, which you would never imagine, honestly. I've gone on some of our trails and never seen it in that manner. Those were the reasons why the decision was made to close the trails, because of the gatherings that were occurring and the social distancing that was not being adhered to. So just wanted to make that clarification also for those who have been frustrated about that, which we understand completely.
Right. The next thing I wanted to mention was, and we talked about this, is whether the city can help organize some kind of collection of personal protective equipment, especially masks. There are a lot of people, people talking about a next door and friends that have, or other people that have contacted me that have small amounts of masks. For instance, I have 2 N95 masks at home from some home repair work that I was doing, and they're unused. It seems like if I just have 2, am I going to call the hospital and go over for 2? That's probably not worth their time to deal with me for such a small amount. But if you add that up across the city, there may be a lot that people have that could be available. And I know you, I believe, Gavin, you contacted some of the hospitals, and they said that they might be interested in something where we maybe we could create a little portal where people can, and I saw this, I think, at the state level, but this is for larger suppliers, where people can indicate, that they have 2 or 3 masks, and then we can somehow have a place where they drop them off safely, or we pick them up safely, and we bring them to our hospitals, just so that we're prepared, and maybe it won't be as bad as our worst fears as far as supplies of PPEs. But if there's anything we can be doing now just to make sure that none of our healthcare workers are working in an unsafe manner, I think that would be a great thing.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I apologize, I'm answering some of these as we go along. I just think it makes it easier if that's okay with you, Councilmember Brotman. Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Councilmember Brotman, yes, you and I spoke about this earlier this week. We've touched base with the hospitals. They are interested in unused masks and personal protective equipment. What we will do is have a program in place through our office and the police department, where we will figure out the appropriate drop-off of these materials, equipment, et cetera, to the police department. We'll figure out which days we're able to do that, put that out there so folks know. We'll provide different dates to make it more convenient for folks to be able to bring anything that they would like to donate, and then we will be providing that to the hospitals and divvying it up amongst the 3 in terms of what their needs are, and they're very much interested. And I think it's extremely important for the community who wants to help have that opportunity to do so if they do have something that they want to donate that has not been used. So we will figure that out and provide that information to the council and the community.
Great, thank you. If I could just move on as far as the what I would call the second crisis and the bigger crisis, which is the one some of the callers talked about, and that's the economic plight of many people, not only renters, but in particular renters. I would totally support Councilmember Devine's suggestion that we go to a 12-month extension on the repayment of any back rents with no penalties or no interest. I don't think that's ultimately going to be the final word on this issue, because there is a risk that when we give people any amount of time that they're going to wait till the end and then, not be able to make those payments. So I think we are going to probably have to revisit this and think about how we work out some kind of amortization, some kind of payment plan scheme. And I think we can think about it, but for right now, since we don't know how long this is going to go on, it's hard to make long-term decisions. I think we're kind of kicking the can down the road on this, but I do think we should align with where LA is. They're at 12 months. I think it'll give people a little bit more comfort to know that they have that amount of time. So I would support that. I would also support us clearly stating that there should be a moratorium on evictions without requiring people to prove that they've been impacted by COVID. This is not to say that if somebody has not been impacted and can't demonstrate the impact, that they'll get a 12-month extension on payments once the emergency is lifted. But I think for the duration of the emergency, we should not be putting anybody in a position where they're forced to go out into the market and look for an apartment. That's just a public health issue. And so I would, and I know that the court today or yesterday put out some guidance on that. And they say they're not going to accept any summons or they're not going to, issue any summons. But I think that we should basically say that no actions be taken by landlords during the emergency and for 90 days after on any evictions, whether they're justified or not. And in some cases, there are probably very good justifications for wanting to evict somebody, but it shouldn't be done at this time. So I would like to see if I could get my colleagues' support on doing that. And I will shut up now.
Let me weigh in on that, Mr. Brotman. As I understand it, the California Judicial Commission has said that there can be no evictions for any reason except involving public health and safety. So if someone's got a crack lab, let's say someone's got a crack lab in their apartment, then they potentially could be evicted if you have the right proof. But the Judicial Council has basically eliminated the need to affirmatively prove that you're affected by the coronavirus. Landlords cannot use the Ellis Act to evict people. That's converting your apartment to a condo. They can't evict to put their family member in there. So I think we're there. Where you want to be, I think we're already there as a state. Am I correct, Mr. Garcia, in that?
I rule it as... If I may, I view it as a rule, statewide rule, prohibiting any evictions at all, other than, as you noted, for public health and safety reasons.
Right. So we're there. The whole state is there. If we want to affirm...
We're not... sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, sorry for interrupting, but I think one thing I'm not clear on, and maybe Mr. Garcia, you can clarify this, is the decision today is that the courts will not accept any, or will not issue any summons. Is that right? But landlords can still initiate the process, and we have heard, anecdotal things in the press. About landlords, threatening and initiating the process and putting pressure on tenants. And I think it would be good if we made it very clear that no no evictions should be initiated at any level during the time of the emergency. Even though, as we said, and I agree, we do know that the courts will not act on any actions that are initiated by the landlord, but I think it would be good for us to kind of take that a step earlier in the process and just say landlords are prohibited from starting any actions. And also, I think we should clarify that there are no penalties basically for non-payment through the period of the emergency and for 90 days after.
Like late fees, you're talking about late fees and so forth.
Late fees, yeah.
Are we already there with our?
That wasn't part of our current order, so, and that's not, that's a cogent point. If we want to include that, the council could give us direction, and we would include that within our orders. As it relates to the California Judicial Council's order, it does prohibit the filing of unlawful detainer action. It doesn't prohibit the giving of the 3-day notice to quit, a pay or quit. But as you know, Mr. Mayor, members of council, that initial step doesn't really mean anything if they can't file the unlawful detainer action. But again, that's a policy call where you want to go with that. I would note that the one city, and actually Mr. Councilmember BROTMAN was the one who made us aware of this, the one city that had this sort of across the board no eviction policy that we're aware of is Culver City. And even there, they have these categories upon which that are less broad than the counties or the CJC's exemptions. So I do think, regardless, CJC's order is still broader than Culver City or what any other cities have done to date.
So if you'd like to ratify the CJC's order, I mean, that would be a way of saying that we agree with that there should be no evictions, because we can't do anything more strict, I think, than they have.
Yeah, maybe that would be good enough, and we can put it in our communications to landlords as well to make sure that, and to tenants, to make sure that tenants are aware that if they're being threatened, they know what the law is.
Can I make a comment or ask a question here on this?
Yes, Ms. Devine.
We're not going to, I thought we had in our resolution that they could proceed with evictions for violent acts, domestic violence, like you say. We're not eliminating that, are we, with this blanket no evictions?
If there is a basis upon which the landlord can show that it needs to commence unlawful detainer or eviction proceedings for the public health or safety, then that landlord is going to be able to do that. Certainly with respect to, if they're running a criminal enterprise within the apartment, if the tenant is doing so, then that would be something that would qualify as a public health or safety basis.
Okay. All right. And we are also not forgiving everybody's rent with this, are we?
It's never been suggested.
No, we're not there, Ms. Devine.
Okay, great. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. BROTMAN, had you concluded, or were you still going?
Yes, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kasakian?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And my concerns are related to just having the right information out there. There's a lot happening right now. Different jurisdictions passing different ordinances and which one supersedes which. I think that what would make most sense, whatever we ultimately decide, and I do support bringing up the issues that Councilmember Devine raised for discussion and for us to take action on, and also give our residents some peace of mind while we work out the details. But I think that one of the things that we should do is provide information in multiple languages in a format that landlords can print out, or a tenant can print out and refer to. And just looking at what we have, and there's a lot of information out there, so I understand the challenge that staff faces in trying to get the information and push it out via the website, but I couldn't find information in Armenian or Spanish or any of the other 4 major languages besides English that we translate materials to on our website. And it's not just on that. I've noticed it on a couple of other things. And when questions have come up, the answer is, well, we're working on it. It should be simultaneously. We should get the resources that we need to make these translations available. If a landlord has an issue or wants to explain what is happening in Glendale to their tenant, they should be able to in a language that is accessible to that individual. And so I urge staff to not spare any resources in making that information available. Additionally, City of Los Angeles just issued the order that all the people in these essential services will now have to cover their faces. Plexiglass needs to be put into counters, which is, I guess, the equivalent of like a sneeze guard. And I'd like to see those types of measures also, or something similar to that to ensure public safety being initiated here by our council, by us for the public safety, at least for the duration of this emergency.
Yeah. Thank you. Great.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kasakian. Mr. Agajanian?
I basically agree with my colleagues, and thank you for the comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will just be brief. I agree with many of the suggestions. The City of LA emergency ordinance regarding masks is for all essential employees of all essential businesses.
And customers.
And customers.
And customers.
So like a supermarket.
So it's both.
It's both, going in and going out. So I would support that. It's maybe already been seconded for agenda purposes. The trails, I've had many people talk to me about the trails saying, man, when you're out there, there's nobody within 100 yards of you. But it's not so much the trails. I think you touched on it, Ms. Beers. It's the congregation at the trailhead or in the parking areas or at the very peak where they're coming to take their rest. So as much as I hate closing public spaces, I do support the order to close the parks Saturday and Sunday. I'm just glad, let me just go off the direct topic. I'm just glad that we have such a strong public safety departments, fire and police. And I've always said that when it boils down to it, no one is complaining about not having the libraries open, but they're all concerned that if they need emergency help by our fire department or by our police department, that they are there ready to go. So, and let's not forget our sanitation workers, because that's something that maybe we take for granted. It's not the sexy department that we have, but I do want to thank all our workers who are driving those trucks, picking up the trash, because Lord knows if those trash bins start to pile up, we've all had the calls. You guys know what I'm talking about. You guys and ladies know what we're talking about. So I'm glad that our Public Works and Waste Management Department is keeping on top of that. So that's basically it. Does the city attorney have a list of things that we talked about that we can ratify at this point?
I do. I think I'll go through them if that's okay, and then maybe we just get a motion. It would be just directing the Director of Emergency Services to prepare emergency orders in accordance with the consensus. I heard extending the repayment date from 6 months to 12 months. I heard a consensus, I think, on the prohibition on the imposition of late fees and penalties as it relates to non-payment of rent related to the orders on unlawful detainers or evictions. I heard obviously a request for an order requiring customers and workers of essential businesses to wear masks, physical masks.
Mm-hmm. Face covers.
Face coverings.
Face coverings.
And I think I heard a request to ratify or incorporate by reference the California Judicial Council's order on the prohibition on unlawful detainer actions for the pendency of the state of emergency declared by the governor 90 days thereafter. And let's see. I think that's
Language, translate the Kasakian.
that, and I think that's already, that is on the
The
website.
website, we do have Armenian on our website and some other languages in terms of, I was just looking because I had seen it before and I thought maybe it had fallen off. If we don't have items that are translated in different languages that we should, we will continue to translate, but the orders that are in place currently have been translated to Armenian and they're on the website front page. And GUSD's items in terms of what they have done is also on our website and it's translated in multiple languages. But we'll continue to translate as the orders come out and other items, as Mr. Kasaki brought up in terms of the importance of that. We'll continue to do that.
Madam City Manager and Mr. Mayor, I'm looking at the website right now at the FAQs for tenants, and I can't find the eviction moratorium information as well as the rent freeze. I can't find it in any other languages besides English. There's a link to a PDF. If there is that in languages, please point it to me.
Yeah, it's,
I'd be happy to look at it and fix it up.
I'll send it to you. It's in the bottom of the page, but we'll bring it to the front.
And I guess the point is,
We'll continue to translate.
let's put that in a form that can be downloaded and printed so a tenant
Makes sense.
or a landlord can pass
Sure.
pass the rules to the other party. Ms. Devine?
And I just want to say to make sure that it's easy to find, because I've heard people say that they can't find any of this information. And I was hoping that this documentation that's being prepared, that it would be in, different languages and that it would be actually sent to landlords and tenants so that they have it in hand, because a lot of them don't have access to computers or they don't bother to look. And I just want to make sure that everybody is on the same page and nobody is threatened. Everybody knows what the law is or what the resolution is.
So I'm told by the city manager that we will be doing that. We have a method to distribute that FAQ or ordinance summary to everyone that has an account, a utility. So did we cut you off, Mr. Garcia, or was that pretty much?
Just
had you gone through it?
Two other items. Just wanted to point out that the City of Los Angeles in their order requires the landlords to provide notice to the tenants of the right not to be evicted under these orders. I don't know if that's something the council wants to direct us to do. And then so that would be, those would be the items on repayment, late fees, and face coverings. And that would be a motion to direct the city manager to put those orders into effect. And then separately, we would need a motion from the council to suspend the 5-minute oral communications during the pendency of the emergency.
So that's the bundle. I do want to make one comment that those tenants that are able to pay rent due to continued job opportunities, my advice is to pay the rent, because as someone mentioned, that once you start letting it creep up and mount up, it may be difficult in the future to pay the rent. So there are some members of the public who are not financially affected by the virus. So we have all those and the separate motion regarding the operation of the public speaking.
The 5-minute oral communications, because you already have the chair already has the discretion on the other speaking items for agenda items.
Okay. Okay. So would someone like to move that bundle? Can we move them all?
I'll make that motion for A and B.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Are we okay with that?
Sure. So maybe we can do them in two separate
Okay, let's break it up, ladies and gentlemen.
So one
Let's
will
do
be on on the emergency orders.
Let's do the emergency orders permitting an adjustment to the oral communications time. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Divine, is there a second?
All second.
Thank you. Was that Brotman or Kasakian?
I think it was Kazakhstan.
Kasakian.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Agajanian,
Yes.
Brotman,
Yes.
Divine,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. And may it be noted that the decision of the chair may be overruled by a majority vote of the council should he make an unwise decision on the oral communication. In other words, if I say everyone's got 30 seconds, you guys can say, oh, you're crazy. We're going to overturn your decision. So just so you know, there's a check. There is a check on the unfettered discretion of the chair. And on the second set of emergency
Right, be
ordinances?
directing the Director of Emergency Services to put forth and implement the emergency orders related to the eviction controls on repayment and late fees, as well as face coverings for workers and customers of essential businesses.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I'll move that.
I'll move it. Second.
I think that was Brotman and Divine. Roll call, please.
Right, correct.
Councilmember Agajanian,
Yes.
Brotman,
Yes.
Divine,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. Thank you very much. Laura, let's move to the next item.
Next item would be management services regarding selection of the city council member to serve on the Southern California Association of Governments Regional Council, representative for the 42nd District, B1. Motion selecting one council member to serve as Southern California Association of Governments Regional Council, representative for the 42nd District for a period of 2 years commencing on May 7th, 2020 and ending on May 5th, 2022.
Ms. Beers?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, we'll go directly to Mr. Tuktalian, Deputy City Manager.
Good evening, Mayor and Najarian, members of the City Council. With the impending expiration of Burbank Councilmember Jess Talamontes' term as the representative of the 42nd District of the SCAG's Regional Council, SCAG has asked the two cities to identify one elected official to represent the interests of both cities. The Regional Council essentially is the governing body of the SCAG, the Southern California Association of Governments, which has a regional interest in our transportation and housing issues in Southern California. This position would be for a 2-year period, commencing in May of 2020 and expiring in May of 2022. That expiration may extend slightly just based on the fact that the ratification of this nomination would have to occur at the General Assembly meeting, which was postponed due to the COVID-19 crisis. So at this time, all we're asking for is a nomination of a Glendale council member to serve in this capacity for 2 years, at which time the position would revert back to the city of Burbank for their selection for the following 2 years.
Thank you. I don't have any speakers on this. Would council members like to discuss it or make any nomination?
I would like to make a nomination if I could, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Brotman.
Yeah, I would like to nominate Councilmember Devine for this position. I think she would be great, and I think she is likely interested.
Thank you. Is there a second of that nomination?
Does it require a second?
Technically, no, because it's a nomination.
Technically, no. Are there any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations, let's take the vote on appointing Ms. Devine to the 42nd District of the Southern California Association of Governments. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Agajanian,
Yes.
Brotman,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes. Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. Congratulations, Ms. Devine.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank my colleagues for the confidence and the trust that they have extended to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We know you'll do a good job. Next item, please.
Next would be Public Works regarding citywide guardrail upgrades project, C1 resolution adopting specifications number 330 and plan number 1-3072, federal project number HSIPL 5144, and directing the city clerk to advertise for bids.
Ms. Spears.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, this is a resolution asking for the plans and specs for the guardrail upgrades project and for the city clerk to advertise for bids. Typically, this item would be under consent items, but it found itself onto our action items this evening. We can answer any questions. Mr. Emrani is on WebEx and can provide you with a brief report if you so choose.
Would anybody like a report? Would anybody like to move the
I'll
item?
move the item. I'll move the item.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Brotman. 8C1. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Agajanian.
Yes.
Brotman.
Yes.
Devine.
Yes.
Kasakian.
Yes.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item would be Public Works regarding contract amendment for the replenishment of funds for the Econo-Light System Traffic Signal Modification Contract. 1, resolution authorizing the city manager to dispense with competitive bidding and execute a contract amendment to the Econo-Light System Traffic Signal Maintenance Contract for the replenishment of funds used on an emergency basis for the construction of a pedestrian hybrid beacon traffic signal and curb extension bulb outs at the Verdugo Road and Oakwood Avenue intersection. 2, resolution appropriating $235,269.60.
Ms. Spears.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Mr. Emrani, Public Works Director, will provide you with a brief report on this item. Mr. Emrani?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. In last August, we had a terrible accident at the intersection of Verdugo Road and Oakwood Avenue, which a teenager was hit by a drunk driver. After that, the Public Works Department embarked on providing additional enhancements to that intersection to make it safer, and we developed the plans and specs for a hybrid beacon system, basically a pedestrian hybrid beacon system, which acts as a signalized intersection would, and it's activated by pressing the button by the pedestrian who wants to cross the street, basically. And because of the urgent nature of this project, we utilized one of our existing contracts to fast-track the project and the procurement of the equipment and the material. The Public Works Department finished the design, and we did the construction and for the phase 1 of the project, which was done around January 15th and mid-January. And the phase 2 of the project is underway, whereas we're going to get some new poles to replace these existing poles to make sure that they are the latest and comply with the latest regulations. So this staff report respectfully requests the replenishment of the Econo-Light contract in the amount of $235,269.60, so that Econo-Light, as our vendor who maintain all of our traffic signals throughout the city, can continue maintaining and responding to those types of projects. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I have questions, Mayor. I want to make a comment.
Yes. Comment, Mr. Agajanian.
Okay. I was there 30 minutes after the accident happened. The This was a black Mitsubishi. The driver apparently was drunk. This is a curve which, when you come from north to south on Verdugo, is very hard to see. It's the distance from the crossmark, which is now in there, is very close to when you turn toward the Verdugo south. And I'm glad to say that I met this young boy who recovered fast, very fast, because probably he was such a young man. And I'm glad I met their parents, and there were parties a few months ago in Glorieta Park for him, and he was present, and he said thank you to all those who came, and they brought flowers and food and pastry. I participated in that festivities, and I'm very glad that we have this light or traffic light installed there, because it was very dangerous crossing, and we'll be happy to support and move this item forward. Of course, they surprised me. It says Alternative 1, approve the attached resolution, and it says Alternative 2, do not approve attached resolution. This has been done, and I gladly will support and move this item. Thank you.
I'll be happy to second.
Well, I'd like to make a comment or two.
Yes, Mr. Brotman.
Before we do that, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I know this accident took place right near Councilmember Agajanian's home. I don't live too far from there either, and I also attended that party, and I met the young boy, Levin, I think his name is, and he did make a remarkable recovery, although it was a pretty horrific accident, and I don't know if he'll make a full recovery. It's been a long time. I haven't heard how he's doing. But one thing, I mean, I went and I looked the other day at that pedestrian hybrid beacon. It's a great system, and it certainly will make that crossing a lot safer. There's a bulb out on one side, and I already asked Mr. Imrani about this. The bulb out is on the side where Verdugo Park is. On the other side, I wasn't sure why we didn't also put a bulb out. It seems like there's room for it, and that would then narrow that crosswalk even more. The narrower we can make that crosswalk, the less somebody is exposed to oncoming traffic. So I think I'd like us to look at that. I also want to say that whole section of Verdugo it's a 25-mile-an-hour section right there because it's so twisty. But cars just go flying up and down that street. And I went walking south from Glorieta. I just walked along Verdugo all the way down to the college. There's this big 4-lane street, 2 lanes in either direction, and there are virtually no sidewalks. There's a teeny weeny little sidewalk on part of it, and then the sidewalk disappears. So I'm walking, on either side of parked cars. It's dangerous, and people are flying. And I would really like us to look at what we can do to slow traffic along that whole segment. This is where, Cañada and Verdugo split, and then where they come back together again. That whole segment, you've got a lot of roadway going up and down Cañada. You've got a lot of roadway going up in Verdugo. We've got a lot of roadway real estate. And I think we should think about whether we can do something with sidewalks, with bike lanes, with something to make at least on the Verdugo side, make that an area where people feel less inclined to speed. Because it's that one crossing now is safer, but I still think that whole stretch is extremely dangerous, and I think there can be things done. And in fact, when I looked at the 2012 bicycle plan, there was a discussion in there of doing something in that section to try to slow down traffic and maybe put in some bicycle facilities. So I'd like us to we fixed the one immediate problem, but now look at that whole stretch and see what we can do about just getting traffic to go at least, at the speed limit.
Mr. Amrani, do you want to touch on the bulb outs based on what Councilmember Brotman had asked yesterday, and I know you looked into it?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Mr. Mayor, council members, Councilmember Brotman, we did follow up on that, and in fact, we did look at both sides of the street to put bulb outs. We only put it on the west side and modified the turning radius on the east side. If we were to construct the bulb out also on the east side, it would be in conflict with the existing driveway there and an ADA ramp at that southeast corner, which is the reason we backed off of adding the bulb outs on the other side.
So conflict with the driveway and the ADA ramp. Is it possible to relook at that and see whether there's some way to engineer that to get that intersection to be a little bit safer? I mean, there's a whole neighborhood there, and I think a lot of the people, are going to be crossing back and forth there to go to the park.
We'd be happy to look at it again. During this process, we wanted to make it as narrow as possible, as you mentioned, so that it would be safer. However, from an engineering design perspective, it didn't work out, but we'd be happy to take a look at it again. And if we can accommodate that, we would be happy to pursue it.
Okay, thank you.
I do have a caller. Why don't we take the caller and we can decide if we'll continue discussions amongst ourselves? Hello, you are on the line, and is this Carrie Field?
Yes.
Yes, you are. You're on the line, addressing item 8D.
Okay, thank you. My name is Carrie Field, and I'm a founding member of Drive Safe Glendale. We're a grassroots organization of 1,627 Glendale residents and growing. Unsafe driving in Glendale is an undeniable problem that has been going on here for a very long time. As the police chief earlier noted tonight, even during a global pandemic, there are Glendale drivers racing down our street at 65 miles an hour. During the recent Glendale City Council campaign, we heard about the 3 E's: enforcement, engineering, and education from every candidate running for City Council. Drive Safe Glendale asked Council to set up a task force immediately to work on recommendations for drastically reducing speeding and reckless driving on the streets of Glendale. All options should be on the table, including these economy light system traffic signals. Thank you for your time and support on this very important issue. I hope you'll take this seriously and start to get ahead on this problem.
Thank you. Perhaps it would be good if we had a report and a presentation on traffic calming. I know that we have a engineering term is the traffic calming, and we have a traffic calming toolkit, which perhaps we can all review and think about how these measures, some physical, some visual, can be used to slow. No one denies that we've got a speeding and reckless driving problem in Glendale. That's obvious. But let's perhaps bring the new council back up to speed on the different measures available, and we can begin a discussion on what we can implement quickly, midterm, long-term, and take it from there, including some of the pedestrian issues that Mr. Brotman raised, as well as I think one of the other speakers regarding the general pedestrian safety. Do I need a second for that?
Mayor Najarian, can I just add a quick point?
Yes.
We also have the pedestrian plan, which I know was completed in 2017, and I've read through it once. It's an excellent plan. And apparently we couldn't bring it up because of issues around the South Glendale Community Plan, but Mr. Garcia says those issues have been addressed, perhaps. So maybe when we have this discussion that you suggested, we could bring that in too and see how we can get that pedestrian plan to council, get that approved, and start looking at things we can implement. Now, I think a lot of these things are going to be interrelated. You know, we've got the bicycle plan from 2012, which I think we're probably due to taking another look at that. We've got the pedestrian plan, you know, this traffic calming work. We should probably look at it all together. And I think the caller also mentioned, you know, bringing the community in. If there's some way we can think about, I don't know if it's a task force or what it is, but something where we engage the community in this conversation. Because I'd say, as I was campaigning, if you asked me, you know, what are the top 2 or 3 things I heard, this was almost universally shared by everybody, you know. So I really think we, you know, now with the new council, I think we've all heard this through the campaign. I think we all want to really bring this to the forefront and see what we can do.
So can staff give us some direction on that? So we want to hear about the pedestrian safety, we want to hear about the vehicular safety, as well as a method in which to, a vehicle with which to discuss all of this, whether it's a study session, a task force, or whatever. Can you come back to us with some thoughts? And I know we've done this a few years back, and you can maybe update us and show us who was involved in that.
Sure.
What results happened. I know 8 years, was it 8 years ago, 10 years ago, we got I got the Office of Traffic Safety in to do a 2-day engineering study session with our members. So can you bring us up to date and maybe give us a path forward on the best way to handle that?
We would suggest, Mr. Mayor, as you stated, members of the City Council to have a study session so that we can provide a lot of good information and bring all of the pieces, as Mr. BROTMAN stated, together under one umbrella for the City Council under a study session, and provide you with the background in terms of, there were task forces in place actually that came up with some of these plans, and how we got to where we are today, and provide that information as an update to council, and you can give us any feedback that you may have.
Okay. Okay, that's a good way. Ms. Devine?
Yes, I was just going to say, if we do the traffic study, that would provide us valuable information to bring together all of these studies so that we get a clear look at the city's pedestrian, cycling, and traffic issues.
Ms. Beers, can we throw that into the bundle?
Citywide traffic study is an item that will come before the City Council for your determination in terms of next year's budget and allotment of funding for us to be able to go do that citywide traffic study, and then we would bring that back as well. So if council did direct us to, I think it's going to cost us anywhere upwards of $450,000 to do a citywide traffic study. We'll have that as part of the budget conversation. Once the funds get appropriated, we'll go out and do that study and provide that information back to the City Council.
Okay, thank you. I have no more callers. We have a motion by Mr. Agajanian. Is there any other discussion that anyone would like to have? Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second. Devine.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Happily.
Councilmember Agajanian.
Yes.
Brotman.
Yes.
Devine.
Yes.
Kasakian.
Yes.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item would be management services regarding discussion of options for filling vacancy in the city clerk's position. One would be motion to note and file and provide direction to staff.
Ms. Beers.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, although this says management services, this was a report done by way of our city attorney's office, so I will defer to City Attorney Garcia.
Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Ms. Beers. Mr. Mayor, members of council, the item before you is a discussion on filling the vacancy created by Councilmember Kasakian's election to City Council, and then thus creating a vacancy in the City Clerk's office. Under the City Charter, the council has two options for filling this vacancy. The first is to fill it by appointment by at least a majority vote of the City Council. The council would have to fill that vacancy by appointment within 30 days of the creation of the vacancy. So by April 30th, the council would be required to make an appointment. Second, the council would have the option to call a special election to fill that vacancy. If the council were not to make an appointment, it would have to call an election to be held within 120 days of the calling of the election. So looking at the calendar, it appears that the outside date to call an election would be May 5th, though there may be, we're kind of looking at whether or not there's some options to that. The charter provides that a special election is not required if the earliest next general election is no more than 180 days from the call of the special election. And the general election means the city's general election, so the next general election would not be until March of 2022. If filled by appointment or by special election, the person appointed or elected would serve in the position as city clerk until the term, Mr. Kasakian's term is up in March of 2022. So we're bringing this initial report to you to get your feedback, what type of process you want to follow, if you have any questions about either of the processes. If you want, for example, on the appointment, if you want to establish a application or appointment process, and on the election, what the options are for holding an election. I will tell you that as you're aware, as we dealt with this previously with respect to filling the vacancy on council as relates to Councilman Sinanian's resignation last year. In order to hold a special election, the city would need to either find a way to do it itself, and it no longer has the availability of the primary consultants that help cities as a result of SB 415, or contract with or consolidate with the Los Angeles County to have them run the election. It's really not a consolidated election at that point. It becomes a contract, a selected election that they would run. When we looked at whether or not to hold an election to fill the vacancy created by Councilmember Sinanian's resignation, the quote that we got to run that special election was over $1 million. We would note, obviously, this would be a different scenario given the fact that while that was to fill a very short term of 8 months, this would be a 2-year term. So those are the options, and if the council has any questions or they want to provide feedback and get some more information, this was just to kind of put the ball in your court to have that initial discussion, so the council could have some discussion and give direction on what process you want to follow. We, depending on the discussion, we're ready and able to bring you a subsequent report as early as next week. Obviously, the agenda would go out likely earlier, and the report will come out a little bit later in the week, but we will endeavor to do that. You'll have a meeting on the 28th, and then the council obviously can always schedule a special meeting on the 21st or any day between now and April 30th to have further discussions on filling the city clerk's vacancy. So that's the extent of our report. Happy to answer any questions on that.
Mr. Garcia, what was the May 5th date again that you said?
So so what the charter provides is that if the council does not make an appointment within 30 days of the vacancy, the council shall immediately, quote unquote, call an election. So it's hard to one interpretation of that immediately is that the next available regular meeting you have to call that special election. And we've looked, there's no real law. Maybe you have a little bit more time because we would need, obviously, before we call the special election, we need to make sure we have our ducks in row with the county and whatnot. So it might be a little bit later than May 5th. We haven't really looked in detail how that would work, but what the charter says is immediately, and our interpretation of that had been in the past, it has to be the first regular meeting after the date upon which you have to make the appointment.
You know, our elections are famous for a lot of door-to-door assistance in filling out ballots and collecting ballots. Would that not be a problem with the virus situation? I mean,
Well, May 5th would be the date to call the election. The date would be
call.
120 days after, so you're looking at like
okay,
September.
so we would be out of that period. Okay. Okay, council members, I don't have any calls coming in on this. Would someone like to kick off a discussion?
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I guess I'll go first.
Ms. Devine, you have the floor.
Yes. Well, you know, right now we're in an economic crisis, let's say, or beginning of one. And I think to spend $1 million on a special election would be a little bit short-sighted. So I would be on the side of an appointment. And I would look to staff to come up with some different scenarios of how that can be done. I know we have staff that are capable, they have experience in that office, and so I think I have to weigh in on the side of fiscal responsibility and say that I would not subject the city to $1 million election. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Devine. Anyone else?
And if I may, Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Brotman.
can I make a comment? Yeah. Yeah, I agree with Councilmember Devine. I think it would be difficult to justify in this environment spending money on a special election. I'd much rather take that money and help out renters or do some many other things they could do with that. So I would say yes, we should not hold a special election. As far as appointment, I would I like the way we approached Zara's replacement. We wanted to be careful not to create an incumbent who would then go on and run and have an advantage in the next election. I want to make sure that we do the same thing here, that whoever we pick is somebody that, of course, has the experience and can do the job. But yeah, somebody that and I know we can't be 100% sure of this, but we're convinced is not going to turn around and then run in the next election. I think the next election should be a fair and open election, and nobody should be given an advantage by our decision to appoint somebody in the interim.
Agreed.
And any other comments from Mr. Kasakian or Mr. Agajanian? I'll jump in.
I have a comment.
Oh, yes, Mr.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I'm inclined to go with the appointment process. I'm not sure we could justify a $1 million election in light of our severe reduction in income. At some point, I would also like to have a discussion on how we will structure the clerk's department. By city charter, we are obligated to have an elected city clerk. I'd like to have a situation where management and the council can provide some balance to the clerk's office, not in the form of the elected position. The elected position is going to remain there. I don't think we're ready to change the charter yet, but I'd like to have a report on that, a way that the council can ensure that we have a professional and qualified person in that department, regardless of who wins an election, to help administer the duties, to help the elected city clerk administer the duties. Mr. Kasakian.
I'm not really sure, Mr. Mayor, what exactly that refers to. How would that be different than the way the city clerk's office was operating before?
the city clerk's office, so here's the problem. Let's say we have an election and we have a very popular but unqualified person that wins the election. And not just popular but unqualified, but intransigent, who accepts no, and this is no reflection on you, you did a great job. But let's say we've got that combination of popular, unqualified, but not willing to take any direction in the operations of the clerk's department. I think we've got a problem in the city. So I'd like to make sure that regardless of who gets elected, that we have someone in there that is qualified, that's professional, that's experienced in the city clerk's role, as an assistant role or performing many of the duties of that office. So that's what I'm referring
Mr.
to.
Mayor, with all due respect, I mean, that could be said about any of the elected officers. In my personal opinion is, you know, just in terms of my thoughts on this issue, I agree with council members Brotman and Devine. I think that it's in the best interest to appoint someone that has a professional experience, especially in the middle of an emergency situation and a crisis. To hold a special election and to spend those funds for that would not be in the best interest of our residents, especially when we do have individuals who are capable of filling the role in the interim and who will, if to use a sports analogy, pinch hit in the meantime until such time when an election can be held and are not going to run for the seat. But you know, I think we ought to give the residents and the voters in particular more credit in terms of who they elect in office. I recall that when I first ran for the seat, many of the things that you just said were echoed or stated as well by people in the general public. And I do appreciate you saying now that I've done a good job, or I did a good job as city clerk, but I do think ultimately the people will vote for who they vote for and who they feel can do the best job as they would for any other elected office in the city. I'm happy to hear what your thoughts are, if and at whatever time such a presentation comes forward. But ultimately, I think it's the people's choice, and I think the office runs well with whoever the people choose.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Mayor, I agree with Councilmember Kasakian on this. That you could say the same thing for the treasurer. These are positions that do require some specialized knowledge, but you have a staff, and I think you know, if people are going to look at the qualifications, and I'm confident that they'll pick somebody who's capable, and even if that person doesn't know all the ins and outs of the job, as long as they've got good common sense, they'll learn, and they have a good staff to guide them. I think it's not something I would worry about. But anyway, that would be my position. I kind of agree that we just continue with it the way it's been.
So,
Well, if I may.
Ms. Devine.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Ms. Devine.
Well, I was just going to say that this is probably a conversation that we should be having later on down the line when we decide exactly what we're doing.
I agree with you. It's not a discussion for today.
Yeah.
The item before us is, do we begin an appointment process or an election process? So it sounds like I haven't heard from Mr. Agajanian, but it sounds like four of us are supporting the appointment process. Mr. Agajanian.
Yes, the only problem I have, we were in this position like almost a year ago. I don't know whom we're going to appoint that will not run. You can't, if the person changes his or her mind, can run after 2 years. And this way, the person going to have advantage over others who would be interested on this position. So, unfortunately, last time I was one of the people who suggested for Zara's seat. I asked Mr. Quintero to be nominated, and I'm glad that at the end of the term, he did not run because we found the right person that he said he's not going to run and he didn't. But how are you going to find somebody, even if he says I'm not, or she says I'm not going to run, she or he may change her mind, or his mind, I mean, then what's we going to do?
I'm not sure that I'm ready to place that requirement that the person not run. In fact, the city attorney advised us with the Sinanyan situation that we could not make that a requirement, that the person not run. I'm not there yet. I need to think about that a little more.
By law, we can't stop the person
Correct.
anyway.
Yes. Mr. Garcia?
That's correct.
That's correct. So I'm not sure I would encourage, I'm not sure I would state where my preference would be on that. I would need to think about it. Obviously, you've stated one of the reasons not to permit someone to run is that they're given a higher profile, almost as an incumbent, technically an incumbent, when they run again. The downside is, what if you've got a really good city clerk on your hands? So I'm willing to discuss that maybe at the next meeting or the meeting after that, and hear from the applicants as to what their intentions are. But do you support the appointment or the election?
I mean, if you find somebody who would be willing not to run, no problem. But I don't know. Last time for the city council, we were lucky. If we know somebody who definitely will not going to run, I'm in favor of it. No problem.
Well, we don't know yet. We don't know yet until we start looking and asking. That's
where I have problem with.
Mr. Mayor and Council, at the, instead of just walking around this issue and tiptoeing around it, we do have an individual in your chambers right now who's been doing the job of the city clerk in terms of running the meetings, has been assisting me as a certified municipal clerk. I don't want to repeat the process that occurred when Councilmember Sinanyan left, and a number of individuals had their hopes raised, and there was this situation in the city council chambers where people came, and then I believe more people left disappointed than having their faith in the process reinforced. I think it's very simple to just ask the person who's sitting right there, Mr. Ajemian, whether he would be prepared to take on a role, which I know he would be. And if there's any questions anyone has, he's here to answer them. I think we just get this done. And I think in terms of the report, I appreciate what staff presented, but we could have at least been given these options now, as we were in June 11th, 2019, when the same report or similar report was brought forth for the replacement of Councilmember Sinanyan. Now, I don't know if action can be taken right now, so we can just put this behind us and move on with the issue of having an emergency and dealing with that and the other concerns. But if we want to have it for one more week and have discussions and have these machinations of what can or can't happen in the future with the city clerk's office, sure. I mean, we can go about that, but I would just direct questions to Mr. Ajemian.
Well, I haven't had a chance to speak to Mr. Ajemian. I don't know if anyone else has. I appreciate your support for him. You probably know his work better than anyone else, but I don't think we're at that point today. We might be there in a week or in 2 weeks, but what would be the appropriate action then, Mr. Garcia, if it looks like we're going away from the election? Right. I don't think anyone is supporting the election.
So it would be directing us to bring back more information on the appointment process, and council can give us thoughts on that right now. Do you want to have it be internal to Glendale employees only? Do you want to have a process that we're reaching out to people who are in this profession, keeping in mind that it does appear that the candidate has to be a Glendale resident? There are no other minimum qualifications other than being a resident, being a registered voter in Glendale. And we can certainly, the city manager's office and I can work on the other parts of it in terms of the process, but we can just bring it back next week and put on there as one of the options, appointment or council can further flesh out the process. I would note that the reason why this was handled slightly different than the process that we did for filling the vacancy created by Councilmember Sinani's departure was a couple of things. One, obviously, this is a full-time paid executive position, and and it was not something we had filled before by appointment, at least not in my time here, whereas we had previous experience filling the council vacancy. We wanted to, we really didn't know kind of between appointment and election and some of the other issues how council would want to handle it. So we wanted to just give you what the charter requires and then have that discussion. So that's the reason why it was handled. It was presented a slightly different manner than the previous report. But at this point, it's obviously we're going in the direction of appointment, and we just need council direction on. We would certainly be able to bring back a appointment of an individual, and then the council can decide whoever they want, or a further process at that point.
Council members?
So I'll move that we go to an appointment process for our city clerk position.
Why we don't wait until they bring the report, whatever report Mr. Garcia was saying, and then proceed with this issue?
So one thing I'm pretty sure of is that there are going to be at least one qualified, willing candidate. So it's not like let's come back next week and see if there's anyone that's qualified and willing. I support going to the appointment process, but I'd like to see other. I haven't had the advantage of working with Mr. Ajemian. That's something Mr. Kasakian has had the benefit of doing. He gave a damn good invocation the other week, though, I do want to say that. But I'd like to see who else is out there. I'm not interested in doing a national search or a statewide search, but I'd like to see what sort of qualified candidates are interested and ask staff to come back with a roster of possible appointees. Can staff do that, or is that giving you too much authority?
I guess we would need clarification, Mr. Mayor, related to the roster. Are we looking at, what kind of a range are we looking at? Are we looking at city employees? Are we looking within the community? Because I would imagine that there would be folks interested.
So we've got to have some limit.
From the community.
Obviously.
I'm not sure if outside of Mr. Ajemian, and I haven't spoken to Mr. Ajemian either in terms of his interests, so I apologize we're talking about you while you're sitting here, Aram. But if he is interested outside of Mr. Ajemian, I'm not sure if anybody else is within the organization. No one has talked to me about that, but we haven't opened that up either, so.
I'd like you to give us a set of minimum qualifications, either familiar with the municipal organizations, not limited to Glendale, a certification of clerk, municipal clerk, whatever that's called. So that would be something. I don't want someone out of the blue coming in. I mean, when we did our council thing, council is different. Running for council, you don't need to have the experience. You've got 4 other people supporting you and a city manager and city attorney, et cetera. But some minimum qualifications that could eliminate the, I don't know. Well, you guys remember, we had 85 applicants. Maybe about 10 were truly qualified. Others had no idea, when does city council meet and, how many times a month are you in the office, et cetera. So if you can bring us back a set of minimum qualifications, and if there's anyone that has expressed an interest in that time, to let us know about that, so we can get this thing going quicker rather than later. Does that make sense to council members?
Yes.
You may have more than one person in the office, Mr. Kasakian, who's interested. You may have You may have former council members who are interested, who may be qualified under that criteria I set forth.
I'm sure you have Councilmember Quintero on speed dial, but I'm also sure that you probably don't want to contact.
Who's talking about Quintero? Anyway, I mean, the point is, the point is that I think Quintero did a good job. But the point is that we have to have some minimum qualifications that we can vet potential applicants against. So we have a short list of potential people rather than the 85-person list that we had filling Zara's seat. Staff, is that giving too much discretion to you? Or you understand, is that doable? I know council sets the policy, but I know you don't want it to be seen that you're the ones making any decision and, you know, playing with a stacked deck or anything of that nature.
I mean, at the end of the day, we would look within the charter, we would look within the specs of the city clerk in terms of what has been written in the past, the professional affiliations and qualifications that we're aware of, and we would provide that to the city council.
Legal background might be
part of the report.
Might be acceptable.
Not required.
Or a MPA, Masters of Public Administration degree. I think you know the.
It's just not required, though.
Not required, but these are
Desirable.
qualifying credentials that would make someone a consideration. Are we okay with that? And Mr. Kasakian, since you know this job probably better than anyone, if you have any qualifiers, I invite you to contact the city manager or city attorney and mention what particular degrees or experiences would be appropriate for our next city clerk.
Will do.
Council, are we okay with that?
We're good. I'm good with it.
Okay. So Ms. Devine, you made a motion. Do I need to restate it?
I did.
Motion directing staff to bring back that information on the appointment process, including anybody who's expressed an interest as well as the qualifications for the city clerk position.
Okay. And is there a second?
Thank you.
Is there a second on Devine's motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Brotman. Roll call, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. Freeze. Do I have any calls? I don't have any calls on this. Yes, roll call.
Councilmember Agajanian?
Yes.
Brotman?
Yes.
Devine?
Yes.
Kasakian?
Yes.
Mayor Najarian?
Yes. Thank you. Next item.
Next item would be oral communications. This discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Council may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The city manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for investigation and report.
Thank you. The telephone lines are not lit. May I assume that there are no calls in the queue?
No calls.
Therefore, that concludes our business and my last meeting as mayor. I would otherwise be throwing a party for everyone. I want you to know that, but the circumstances of this coronavirus prevent me from doing so. I will give you all a rain check on that when we can all get together and hoist a libation to my year past. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Mayor Najarian?
Yes.
Mayor Najarian, we're going to hold you to that.
Of course. Would I lie to you?
Yeah, of course.
Is there
to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Yes, second.
Second. We are adjourned.